Oh, give me some Indiana Jones and some Hellblade 2 and also Outer Worlds 2. All y'all take that.
This is an Xbox and that is an Xbox. This is an Xbox and so is my PS5.
Hello and welcome to Triangle Square, the PlayStation podcast. I'm your host, Brett Beck, and alongside me, joining us to sing the praises of the whole slate. The whole what, Chris?
The whole slate.
The whole slate.
The whole slate.
Chris, let the people know how you're doing today, so they can give you good Christmas or holiday tidings.
I'm doing okay, man. It's been an interesting week, but overall doing pretty good.
It has been an interesting week. More, what's weird is like how quickly I had adjusted to every 2 weeks as well. Because like peeling the curtain back a little bit, we're recording 2 weeks in a row for the first time in quite a while because of wanting to get back on the schedule that we were since we had to move. I don't know why. The impending nature of knowing that recording was coming again so quick was just like, it wasn't a bad thing, but it was like I was very aware of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but yes, this is a PlayStation podcast, Triangle Squared. If you're new, first and foremost, welcome. We hope that you stick around to hear us talk about the Game Awards, both what was shown primarily with the reveal side, since that's what the show has ultimately become, as well as kind of giving our thoughts on some of the awards that were given out and also some of the highlight moments that weren't necessarily reveals or awards, of which I think there might have been a few, but we'll see how Chris agrees on that. As you should know, we had the little joke song in the beginning. The reality is that we play games no matter where they're at, as long as they interest us. I have played plenty of Xbox games, but let's not try and hide anything here. Chris and I are primarily big PlayStation fans. That is where the vast majority of our gaming goes. So while we both may own Xboxes, and I guess everybody owns an Xbox now with the new ad campaign, and I also own a Switch, I would be lying if I said that the vast majority of my gaming was not 100%. that sounds like I'm saying something, but most of my gaming is from my my PlayStation. So
I don't even
stick around if that interests you.
From a fanboy perspective, I care from an I was right this whole fucking time perspective.
Oh yeah, I mean that's a different conversation for when we get to talking about the whole slate. But I wanted to go ahead and set the groundwork for anyone who may not know how this podcast operates. We do not, or at least we believe that we do not unfairly throw shade where it is not due, and that we throw praise where it is due. And sometimes it is definitely due, even on the sides that we don't necessarily, or at least rather we don't normally spend time talking or playing. So join us as we're going to talk about all those things, including the games from Xbox that we are excited to play on our Xboxes. But we're going to start this show off in a time-honored way of checking in on what we've been playing and basically giving you guys maybe what should be on your radar next, what maybe shouldn't be on your radar next, or what you might have been excited for that hearing us talk about may push you one way or the other towards going for it or moving against it. So, Chris, starts people off. We all know that you play Balatro just as like a second full-time job. So feel free to talk about Balatro, but I think we can do that when we go to talk about all the awards that racked up. So if you want to offload that, that's fine. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on the first game on your list and then to see how the Thaumaturge is still holding over for you. So have at it.
I've been playing Atomic Heart. It's kind of the game I've started recently.
Can I ask you, like, what led you to that? That seems surprising to me. Was it just the right price, the right time?
Yeah, I mean, I always thought it looked pretty neat, but I guess I thought it was closer to Doom than Prey, but that's just me. But no, honestly, it was just one of those things where I'm like, I had once I platinum Cyberpunk, like nothing had really stuck too well. So it was one of those things where I'd been kind of like searching for something to put my time into that I was really going to stick with. So I tried a couple of things. Like I started The Witcher 3 again, the PS4 version, which interesting to report, it runs at 60 on the PS5. I don't think it did
Yeah.
on standard because I tried to go back to it after the PS5 version and it was rough. I think it might have been in 30, but.
So what do you think is going on? You're saying.
Well, I'm saying the PS5 Pro
the
through the boost is bringing it up to a 30. Or a 60,
30
sorry.
more to a 60.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm curious about that. For some reason, I thought that game had basically gotten an update to leverage the PS5 without getting a PS5 specific. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Maybe it had. I just remember.
What I'm trying to remember is I think it may have gotten a PS4 Pro mode. So maybe I'm not sure, but I feel like the PS4 version ran at 60 frames, but I might be wrong. Hard to say.
Yeah, I don't know. Either way, like it was one of those things where I was playing that, and then I was like, well, I haven't done Heart of Stone or Blood and Wine yet, so what am I doing? And then I started doing that, and it was just one of those where nothing was really sticking. So it was on sale, I think, for like $27. I was like, fuck it. So I bought that price. And Okami on the sale. But I did do my research. Like I checked, like I was reading all the forums to make sure that like the game worked, like the platinum wasn't as difficult to get now, all this kind of stuff. So
yeah, because I feel like I remember that game having some bugged trophies or some weird shit.
Power Picks, the trophy website, they had made
never
a post.
Even finished it, right?
No, they literally made a post like this game is too broken to bother with a trophy guide, basically.
Ooh,
so
that's a damning statement.
Yeah, and I can't find there isn't one. There's like achievement guides and like Steam guides, but there's no like PSN profiles. This is the guide, because that for me is like the definitive guide for any game. Is you click on PSN profiles, just the way they set it up. Like the PlayStationTrophies.org has good ones too, but nothing is as clean as the PSN profiles like interface for a trophy guide. The way it's all broken up and shit. So
I agree with that, but I don't always. Even though I like the actual UI for it, I don't always like the way that the actual guide itself is structured.
Oh, for sure.
Which I don't use guides that often. You know what I'm saying? So it's a little rough. But I feel like usually when I do, I tend to lean towards Power Picks.
I don't like Power Picks at all. Actually,
but I've also used PSN trophies. I mean, I've used whatever will have a decent guide. A lot of it, this sounds weird. It's almost like when you find a reviewer that you click with, half of it's just you like the way they structure their review.
Yeah.
So it's like, I follow this person because I like the way their trophy guide was structured.
I would like Power Picks guides more if they weren't like if the ads weren't so aggressive. Like there was one guide I was trying to use where it popped up a full screen ad and I couldn't find the way to close it out. So I had to refresh the page to get back to where I was. And then I'm thinking about it and I'm like, if there's no way for me to click out and I have to refresh the page, and you've built your website so that if I refresh, it comes back to exactly where I was, you're literally you're making my experience worse to farm clicks off me, because that's what you're doing if I'm refreshing the page every time. So I just won't go there. PSN profiles is perfect for me.
That's fair.
But regardless, I checked through all the forums, so it was running well. So some positives about the game. That sounds like I'm going to be negative. I'm not, but I have one big complaint. Some positives about the game is that it's really fun. The combat is okay. I don't love it so far. It's like I said, I was going in, and we talked about this last week. I'm not a huge trailers guy. I see a game that I'm interested in and I play it. Right. I was expecting something closer to like Wolfenstein and Doom than like BioShock and Prey, which is not a bad thing.
Because immediately the first time they showed it, like way before the game came out, like 3 years before it came out, immediately BioShock is what came to mind. I was like, this is very BioShock to me.
I think for me, it's the like, I don't think I've had more than like 20 bullets on me at a time. And that's what I wasn't expecting. Like I thought I was buying more of a first person shooter than I'm really buying. I'm playing a resource management first person shooter, right? Which is, it's interesting. And you have like melee weapons, like you have this axe and you can upgrade it, and you can upgrade all your weapons. You can craft new weapons, all this kind of stuff. But I really just wasn't expecting a like, it has Resident Evil puzzles. It's resource management, and then it has that story where if it wasn't so obvious of a twist, the BioShock twist would be there. You know what I mean? Just the way that it's being communicated with you. You're always talking to this AI glove, which again, I'm very early, so that might just be exactly what it is. But you get all this sense of it. But like I said, for me, I was going in again for some reason expecting doing some more walking than you would do in a Doom, right? I wasn't expecting a stage-based game, but I wasn't expecting holy shit, I can't beat this mission because I do not have ammo. But it's not a bad thing. It's a fun game. I'm enjoying my playthrough. It just wasn't what I was expecting. So,
quick question, because this is the one thing that I didn't spend a whole lot of time with the reviews whenever they hit. I just knew that the game kind of made a big change from what I originally got excited about when they first gave it a very cryptic reveal. And then when they started doing it again, I was like, I don't hate what I'm seeing, but I'm also not sold on it like I thought I was. The way that you're describing it, and I kind of had that BioShock take to it as well, and even Prey, I think, is a pretty apt thing from just the gameplay I have seen. Do you think that you would have this game rise to what you may consider to be an immersive sim, or do you think that this doesn't quite go that far with its gameplay loop?
I would say if Pokemon is baby's first JRPG, this would be baby's first immersive sim.
Okay. That's not terrible. Because it's not, Pokemon's a good game.
Yeah, it's not Prey. Yeah. Prey is very you can do some in-depth weird shit with it. This is go here, do this. You're managing resources. You have to craft stuff, so you're going through all these things. All the drawers and stuff, which is the one thing I like. It has the opposite of the Red Dead problem, where it literally has the R1 button is just you hold up your hand and all the resources and stuff that you can pick up just kind of fly towards you. I'm like, oh, this is cool. The drawers just open. It has some of the most. My biggest complaint is that it has some of the most incongruous voice acting I've ever heard in my life.
I remember that in the reviews that certain voice acting sounds really good, and then the next person you'll be like, did they fucking hire somebody off the street who's never seen a microphone?
That I don't necessarily care about, because a lot of the quote unquote bad voice acting is the robots, which you can expect stilted stuff that.
Well, and interestingly enough, I know you're not talking about Thaumaturge yet, but one of your things about the Thaumaturge that you kind of found charming even is that the voice acting felt like they hired two voice actors and then just filled in with the other voices that they couldn't quite get to work by just going. It feels like they took the PS1 approach of, Dan.
Yeah, exactly.
Come throw this line down real quick.
You're going to do an iconic performance in Resident Evil, and we're not going to know who you were in 20 years. No, this is a different way where I'm playing a Russian soldier, right? And yes, the voice acting is in English, but this is a dude from Connecticut.
So you're saying it's taking you out of the game because it doesn't feel in world, it doesn't feel accurate for the world.
It's just it's aggressively Russian. That's the thing. I some of the stuff in Thaumaturge, it's whatever, because first of all, I know it's a lower budget game, but also
True.
It's not advertising to me that it's Russia or whatever it is, Poland. Do you understand what I'm saying? When you're walking through these environments, you could tell me this was a fantasy land and I would believe you. It's just through the characters and stuff like this. But Atomic Heart, there's Russian flags. You're being called comrade. All of this stuff, it's all red. It's the reddest thing I've ever seen in my life. And this dude is just yes, yeah. I'm putting on an accent by accent. I'm doing a better job. He's just yes, comrade, I can do that. Oh no. And I'm you're Russian.
Yeah. I'm picking up what you're putting down. Yeah.
You've played
It'd
Metro.
Be like if the Metro, it's exactly, it'd be like in the Metro games if suddenly they weren't Artyom. If it was hey, Artyom.
Right. Oh,
Artyom.
Artie, how you doing? Coming to the barbecue? We're going to go to the girls' volleyball, practice later. It's just a little.
For how in your face the game is trying to tell you it's Russia, they're like losing the plot when it comes to the voice acting.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. Like the glove has an accent. The people in this, there's which actually is one of my favorite characters. But there's like the crafting machine is just unbelievably sexual. It's very funny.
I remember hearing that. Yeah,
it's very funny. But she's got a Russian accent, and she's a fucking machine. And my main character, a high-ranking army guy, I'm fairly sure that's what he is, talks like fucking Jerry from Chipotle. It's like, what are we doing here? There's no attempt to it, man. That's the thing.
Sure.
If it's one of those things,
which I think it's that studio's first game, and I think it was a pretty damn ambitious idea for that studio, which I think is why the game came out so broken.
For sure, it's not. It's a complaint in that it's like the fact that it's my biggest complaint is probably a good thing for the game.
Yeah,
but it's fair. It's a little outrageous. It's like again, everything is Russian.
So let me ask you a quick question, because I'm always curious. Do you find that you're talking about coming off of Cyberpunk and how nothing was quite landing for you, and I could see someone thinking like, you play the CD Projekt Red game, go to another one that you already knew you liked and play content you didn't play. But do you find that maybe the reason that Atomic Heart is scratching some kind of weird itch for you that's just kind of holding your attention, at least for now, has anything to do with a feeling of getting... I don't know exactly how to word this, but it's like you played one type of game for such a long period of time that trying to play anything else just feels off, and you almost need to find something that is remotely similar. You know what I'm saying? Like it's almost like it's almost like it's familiar by way of being unfamiliar. So it's like it's important because it is something different. It's something new. It's not something I've experienced, and it is a different game, different world. But it has a lot of the gameplay tendencies and visual styles and whatnot that are at least somewhat adjacent to a Cyberpunk. Like, do you think that's what's happening here, or do you think this is just this game is scratching a weird itch that you can't really say is because of Cyberpunk? You get what I'm saying?
Well, I think I'm at a point where it's like, I either want to play something long and in depth like a Cyberpunk, or I want to play something quick. But it was a thing where like even the quick stuff wasn't hitting, you know what I mean? And so it's been at a place where like a lot of it's like, because here's the thing, like I joked about it in our Discord. I think it's too late anyway, but like I had my original plan was to finish Cyberpunk, and then I downloaded like 40 games that were not like, they're not like slop. You know, I'm not TT Dog doing 85 jumping tacos in a day. But congratulations on your achievement.
He's top of the chart. I mean,
no pun intended, but congratulations on that. But so it was like, Telltale's Guardians of the Galaxy. It was Wolf Among Us, because I've never gotten that platinum. Stuff like that. A Short Hike.
Great game, by the way.
But like, there was just nothing that was hitting me. First of all, I think I can say this definitively. I never want to play a Telltale game again. Ever.
Oh, that's going to be really interesting.
It's just every time I try, I'm just like,
Yeah, I'm real curious. That'll be a conversation we'll get into a little bit later down the road, because there's some Telltale adjacent things in the Game Awards that I was I was thinking through, and I was like, man, it's been a long time that even though I can play some of the old ones, thinking of it in a new context seems weird, but we'll save that for a little bit.
So I think it was just me kind of searching out something, and then this being interesting enough, to kind of push me through. So.
All right. Well, what's your update on Thaumaturge?
Not a huge update. It's still good. I still think that people should play it. It's a little, it's budget. There's some stuff that I wish it had that it doesn't. But it's really like just know what you're getting into. You're getting into a $30. I don't think this is a very long RPG. I'm pretty sure I'm almost done with the first part. I just have to go do some of the side quests before they're gone. And I'm enjoying it. I think it's really fun. I think it's going to get repetitive pretty soon here, because there's no real variety to the combat yet. But I haven't unlocked the next tier of upgrades. So like I have all of my Surters, which are like the spirit things that can attack in combat and stuff like that. So I have all of the base ones. I'm assuming that they evolve. But I don't know. It's just got some weird quirks. Like there's no items, which is good. But sometimes you get into hard battles and
nothing to fall back on.
Yeah, because it kind of plays out. It's a turn. The combat plays out turn-based, right? But it's all based on speed, which is interesting. It's all based on like the speed of the attack and the speed of the person going. So like, I can switch to one of my healing Surter, but it's very likely that by the time it does what it needs to do to heal me, it's either not even worth it anymore, or I'm already dead because it's been placed all the way over here because these guys are quicker or their attack is quicker. So it's been one of those things where like I kind of wish it was like, okay, I can decide not to attack and I can heal myself, or I can guard. There's no guard. So I've had a couple times where it's like I'm doing these like basic fights against bartenders and I'm getting stomped because like I'm just not playing it properly. So in a way it's like it's a turn. The combat is almost a turn-based puzzle, which is really interesting.
That's actually that's a neat idea. If it goes as deep as the thing about saying it like that is that you almost make it seem like it's truly designed that way, and I think I might be overblowing what you're actually trying to say a little bit.
No, I think
conceptually it seems really cool. But I think that you're just saying like you have to think, which this is kind of true of any kind of turn-based game, right? I generally say, or this is true of most combat in general, right? Where there's a rock paper scissors to most games where it's like this is strong against this, which is strong against this, but that's strong against the original thing. That's generally how a lot of games work.
In this one, it's more just like what am I trying to think here? I'm trying to think of the right word for it, but it's more you have to make, if you're not making the right moves because there's no self-healing to fall back on, like in Persona 5, if you fuck up, like you might have an item that's like, oh, heal everyone to full, and then you're good, like you're back to where you need to be. But in this one, if you're not paying enough attention, or if the guy lands a critical and you don't have your healing set up, like you're done. And there is no, okay, I'm just going to heal myself because I bought 99 potions at the store, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's where it feels more like a puzzle game, because I feel like there is a proper order of battle.
Okay, yeah. If you're pulling in speed, then that makes sense. Like, right, you want to make sure that you're thinking about how quick your opponent might be, what you might need to do.
I guess the way I'm thinking of it is like, if somebody wanted to, I genuinely think they could make a guide with each step of every fight, and you could conceivably play the game that way if you wanted to. And not in like a typical way, but in a like, you are guaranteed to win if you do this steps of actions, not like this is a tip. It's like, no, strike, heal, strike, do your slowdown, bring his fear all the way down. You could do that. So it's a good game. I still think you specifically should play it. And TT Dog, he liked Banishers. He should play it. But anyone else, if you liked Banishers, you should play it. These are the
Banishers.
Most vocal people I've ever heard play it. So I'll talk about that game. Banishers is just, it's the story vibe is the same. It's very supernatural.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. So,
and it still has somewhat of an old time.
Yeah,
spin
it's in
to
like
it.
the 18s, I think.
Yeah.
So,
that's
those
cool.
are my games.
No, I like that. Let me quickly. Lego Horizon, it continued to be really good. I think for a Lego game, it had the most interesting combat that I've seen. And it also seemed to make, of course, it's not super punishing when it comes to platforming, but it was interesting watching my wife struggle with platforming. And I thought, I don't think I've ever played a Lego game that really gave this much precedence to specifically platforming, because they're normally pretty simple to be good of all ages. But it was cool. We got the platinum. And it's basically the second platinum my wife's ever gotten, because she played Bug Snacks on my account. But when I opened her save file, when she told me she beat it and I looked at it, dude, she platinumed the game without platinums.
Really?
Like, she had no trophy drive because she was playing on my account. But when I looked at her save file, she did everything. And I was very proud of her. So this is like her second platinum, and it was a lot of fun because of that. So we're going to keep looking at games that are co-op to play. I think we're going to start trying to I've downloaded it already. This is good timing because it ended up hitting PlayStation Plus. But I think I'm finally going to play It Takes Two, which is pretty good. And I think it's playing it with my wife is probably the ideal person to play that with, considering the story.
Yeah.
So that'll be pretty good. I'm excited, and having I kind of showed her the trailer, and she thought that looks interesting. But seeing her struggle with platforming in Lego Horizon, I'm a little worried that she's going to get too frustrated. But I'm hoping that maybe the charm of it all can kind of carry her, or I'm hoping that maybe she can control her own camera, because I started noticing set camera positions in Lego. Her depth, the way she thinks depths in games works, is not quite right. It's like she would be jumping, and instead of jumping sideways, she'd like jump side and back. And so she'd like miss the thing she was jumping toward. So I'm wondering if she has more control over the camera, if she'll do well, because Bugsnax has got quite a bit of platforming in it, and quite a bit of you need to be quick and make snap movements, but you have complete control of your camera in that game. So I think that might be what it is. She can always keep the camera somewhere she likes it. So that game was great. I really enjoyed getting the platinum in it. It has a little bit of from a trophy design standpoint, it's a little bit of a grind that, depending on how you feel like about the game, can get rough because you've got to get all characters to level 20. And I don't know if that went faster or slower because I was playing co-op. Probably slower, because realistically, I would have been flying through this game. But It was fun seeing my wife get into games and get into wanting to explore. And even though we were at the point in the game where we didn't need any more studs for anything, when we were going through and grinding to level, she was still going off the beaten path and burning down bushes and finding treasure chests and building things to get the extra studs just because she wanted to. She would be running around breaking any breakable thing to get the studs. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to let it. I'm going to foster this like of video games, you know?
I mean, in the end, that's good. It's one of those, like, you would never have thought about this game again. You'll probably remember this game for the rest of your life now. So
realistically, I probably will. I mean, there's something to be said about the Lego sense of humor is always really good, but I've not played a whole lot of the Lego games. So that's another thing that I'll start probably doing with her, is just finding Lego games on PS4, PS5, and start playing those. So that was great. So I beat that, of course, and got the platinum. And then I beat Life is Strange Double Exposure, and I'm working on the platinum. I'm about halfway through the second playthrough that you have to do. And this is one of those things where, like, sometimes I hate the way trophies are, and I know that it does make a big is strong. It makes an impact on the story, but basically there's a decision, basically the first decision the game gives you, that there's one dialogue choice you can make, and it gives you two different endings, and it's all about what happened in Life is Strange 1. So you basically say what you think, like what your canon version of it was, like what did you originally gut do, and so you can go through, and it changes some of the context of the story and what's happening.
That seems,
and so you have to do a playthrough of both. It's called the Bay or Bay.
Oh.
And I think you already, and I don't want to spoil Life is Strange 1 for anyone, so I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm of a couple of, I think you were asking me how I felt about it. I think I was really, as I'm playing through the second time today, or yesterday, today, I think I'm seeing some of the things a little bit more for what they are. I think it's a decent game. I think it's worth playing. I think it's the right game for me to be playing coming off of a game that's as long and involved as Persona. But I think that really thinking about what Life is Strange has done as a series, I think that series has only progressively gotten worse. That doesn't mean bad. I just mean that it's got a downward trajectory a little bit. I think the first game, and I am going to put this to the test, I'm going to, within a couple of months, download and play the Life is Strange remastered. And I'm going to re-experience the first game and see how I feel about it, and see if it's just nostalgia, which is still always going to be a potential factor, or see if I'm just misremembering the game and how I felt about it. But in my memory, I think Life is Strange 1 is the best that the series had. I think Before the Storm is pretty damn good. I think 2 is really good. I think True Colors is fine. I got it with no... it was free on PS Plus. So you get to this thing where I do think some of the way you feel about these games is what were the stakes? And I had a few hours in True Colors. It wasn't that difficult of a game.
Yeah.
It had an interesting enough story, but I don't think it was doing enough. So when I'm playing this one through and kind of seeing everything over again, I think this game, I'm trying to figure out, is it that Deck 9, who is not the original developer for Life is Strange 1, who's trying to play with this character that they didn't create? I'm wondering, is it that they aren't as deft at their writing as Don't Nod is? And I think that might be the case because Don't Nod made Banishers, given a call back to that, and Vampire and a bunch of other games. I think that Don't Nod have good character writing. Playing this through, I think a lot of the characters feel a little flat. And I think a lot of what carries it is relatively interesting twists and wanting to see Max again in some capacity, which has been cool. And I think that they do a middling job with it. Sometimes I think the game is really cool and interesting. And I've even noticed my wife kind of being pulled into watching me play it. But I do wish for a little bit more from it. One of the things that even my wife noted is that there's a thing about this game where I feel like the series has gotten so inundated with making sure that it's being representative that it starts to feel almost too ridiculous in the fact that, like, pretty much, and I know this doesn't matter, and a lot of the characters that I'm about to talk about are not inherently uninteresting characters. Some of them are actually moderately interesting with what they do with them, but every character that you really and truly interact with in the game is gay or bisexual. And I was just like, it's so weird playing because that's just, and it's like all of them want to fuck all of the other ones. I don't know how to really, like, that's not really what it is, but it feels like the game world is just trying to sell me a world in where no one is like, I don't know. It's not that it's beating you over the head with it. It just feels like they're trying too hard to make sure that everyone is some kind of token person. And I think that a lot of that comes to the fact that a lot of the Life is Strange games are actually kind of allegories for minorities going through some things. And I think most of the time they've done a good job with that. I think 2 does a really good job with that, talking about people of color and, you know, these little Hispanic boys that are going through some shit and being, you know, unfairly kind of targeted by the cops, things like that. And so I do think that there's something to be said about that, but I feel like they're losing the forest for the trees and trying to make sure that they're representing so hard to where a couple of times in the game I'm like, man, this is just a little hard to believe, but it is a liberal arts college. So part of me was like, I'm just going to give it the pass, but I still enjoy it. Ultimately, I think it's a little too on the nose, which is a weird complaint because sometimes I think on the nose things can be good. And I think sometimes on the nose things can be distracting. And I don't really know how to define where it is, but it's almost that thing of like, you know it when you see it. And I say that because a lot of people's complaints of Detroit Become Human was that it was too on the nose with what it was trying to reference. And while I understand what they mean in that it's very, you clearly see what it's referencing in the real world, I never took that as it wasn't a negative towards the game, even though it's true. Like, yes, it's very obvious that it's pulling from this as inspiration. So yeah, it's a fine thing to go through, but I still ultimately recommend the game. I just think that if you are not just the biggest Life is Strange fan, I think you might be best waiting for it on a sale like I did, or when it inevitably hits PS Plus. What I will say is I'm curious to see what they do with the next one because there is going to be for sure another one. So we'll see how that ends up turning out. There's some good there. There's some bad there. Or bad seems strong. There's some good there and there's some not as stellar there. And I'd be curious to see what anyone else who has spent some time with it thinks about it. Or if I'm getting a little bit of a, when you play the same thing twice, you start to see its flaws a little more clearly because you're already aware. It's like some of the drive is gone.
Yeah.
So there's that. I'm really curious to see. But you know, Chris, I'm curious to see if you ever get around to playing this, primarily because I want to go back to something you started with a second ago and saying that you don't think you could play a Telltale game ever again. And I'm curious, is that specifically Telltale and the way that they go through? Or do you think that extends to the type of game that Telltale games are, where they are primarily just about dialogue decisions and moving through?
I don't know. Because it was one of those things where like I tried to play Guardians, and it could just be a thing where like I just didn't like Guardians of the Galaxy. It could just be that. But like I've played a lot of these. You know, I've played all the Walking Dead games. I played all the Batman games. I played Game of Thrones. Like I've done
Wolf Among Us. I know that you played that.
Yeah. So like I've
Originally.
done all of these. Like I've done this a lot. And it kind of is the Destiny thing, right? Where it's like Sean wants me to play, and I'm like, dude, I played too much Destiny to ever want to do it again. And I kind of feel like because I think maybe it's dumb, but I think they bother me more at this point because they don't commit to a lane. Like I kind of wish that because the gameplay in Telltale games is usually not very good. So
No,
like I do wish there was less of it. If you're gonna try and tell me this really interesting story, like I don't need Lee shooting bottles, like I don't need that stuff, and it just kind of takes away from what I would be going in for. Because if I was going into, Guardians of the Galaxy for like a very minimal, like go over here, do some investigating, and we do one or two gameplay things a time. But what you're really doing is you're watching this story play out, and you're choosing dialogue options, and you're seeing how that goes through. That's fine, because that's the part that's interesting. So when it was Guardians of the Galaxy, and I'm walking around as a child, and I'm picking up like tchotchkes on this dude's desk, I'm like, I don't give a fuck, and it just turned me off, So
man, and see, I think what happens there, and this is where I told you that having never played The Walking Dead until like 3 years ago, whenever it was that I finally played it, and then replaying The Wolf Among Us and kind of rethinking about the context of that, and then what I played afterwards, like Tales from the Borderlands and Guardians of the Galaxy and the Batman Telltale series, I realized that in many ways they actually stepped further away from their adventure game aspects. Whereas there's a few moments in both Wolf Among Us and The Walking Dead where I'm like, oh, dude, this is like Day of the Tentacle and shit. Like this is like that Grim Fandango and things like that, which is cool. And I really like that. And then I noticed that as they started getting bigger, they started pulling more of that out. And I think the problem is they tried replacing that with gameplay that's not actually interesting, because I think they were trying to go towards what they thought was more mainstream with gameplay. But those games are not that really. The engines for those games are not built to handle interesting gameplay in that vein. I think they are built to handle puzzle solving and giving you items and making you figure out what you're supposed to do with them. And I even use that as an example in Life is Strange. There's a couple of moments, and I actually wish they were more in depth, where it's like you're walking around a room and it's just wanting you to like pick up picture frames and spin them around and look for a key that's hidden and stuff like that. And I'm glad it's there to break up the gameplay, but it kind of just, it's funny seeing it, because I'm like, man, I would have really liked this to have actually been more involved. If you're gonna tease me with this, why not actually commit to it? Kind of like you're saying, pick a lane. If you don't really want to do adventure game stuff, then just be a really good story-based game. But I'll give them credit in that game in particular. There's some times where I do think they're using the mechanic of this game where you can switch between the two worlds to a good degree, where it's like, oh, you have to do something interesting. And one of the neat things you can do in Life is Strange is that you can, when you're in one world, you can hit R1 and pulse, and you can see objects and people and hear them from the other world, so that you can like sneak up on people and hear what they're talking about by switching to the other world, walking to where they're at in the world and pulsing to hear them, so that you can gain information and clues. That's actually pretty neat. And I would have liked to see the game maybe even double down on that, but they don't quite want to really go into that, just in case it's like a barrier of entry thing. So, but go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I just think one of the things I like more about Life is Strange is that it tells its story in the same way as a Telltale game, but it does pick its lane, where at least what I remember of Life is Strange 1, where it's a Telltale game in sections, but it's all gameplay until it's story time, you know? And I've
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, it's like you'll do like at the beginning, like you'll do the puzzle, you'll do the reversal, and then it's a 20-minute cutscene with dialogue options. But the gameplay sections are more in depth and they're just better. like Life is Strange 1 is a lot better to play than Walking Dead season 1. The gameplay on that is pretty rough sometimes. You know?
Like that doesn't mean that, like, ultimately I think story-wise and what they're trying to get across to you from an experience with characters, I think they're pretty equal games in a lot of ways. Actually, I think they're both very impactful, but I do ultimately agree Life is Strange 1, even haven't been played in a while, is a more fun game to play than Walking Dead. They're both really good stories, but the Walking Dead's gameplay gets in its way a lot. And that's true of most Telltale games. And that's been my thing with them coming back is can they finally change that? And I'm almost curious to see how that's going to work. I know we're jumping the gun a little bit, but there's a game they showed during the Game Awards that's from people who started a new studio after leaving Telltale whenever that, Telltale went under. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, man, I'm curious, and part of me wants to try and play it just so I can see if even the people behind those games can have learned a lesson about how you can interact or how you can interweave gameplay into this experience, or just commit to being about being a story and just do that. One or the other. Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see. I do like those games. I do think I'll go to this game because the thing for me is like I'm not interested in any of the other like characters they've put in here. Like I liked Max and I liked Chloe, so like going back to them, or at least Max, whatever. Going back to those characters, that world is more appealing to me than the superhero game or whatever it was. So.
Yeah. And I'd be curious to see if you ever do get around to 2. I'd say if you're going to play the games, I think Before the Storm is ultimately worth it because it's about Chloe, and I think it does do a decent job. And it's Deck 9, the same people that did Double Exposure. And I think Deck 9 was also who did True Colors. It's nice seeing that the engine get a lot of credit, like a lot of move forward. Like, man, Double Exposure looks really good while still having a very stylized approach to it. Like graphically, it's cool seeing a lot of texture detail, but still seeing them commit to an art style while not trying to go completely photoreal. I really like that, and I think they did a good job with it. There's times where even like in Telltale games, I guess they're just pushing it too hard, and you'll get pop in and maybe like a little bit of weird model jitter. You'll be like, what the hell's going on? But it's pretty rare, and it's pretty forgivable,
Nice.
Yeah, cool. So nice to see that. I don't know exactly what I plan on playing next. Now that we beat Lego Horizon, it's been deleted, as is the way you go. When you platinum a game, you delete it. It's the ceremonial. It's like the Viking funeral for the game.
Mm-hmm. You fire arrows at your PlayStation 5. And
yeah. Boo, boo, boo. I'm going to derail the conversation for just a second because there's a curiosity that's hitting me.
Hit me.
So I know that you're a Dr. Pepper man.
Yeah, of course.
As am I, because Dr. Pepper is amazing.
The only true soda.
Do you, in your area, have Pibb?
Yeah.
Do you like Pibb?
It's of all the alternative Cokes, I think it is the best alternative.
Agreed.
Okay.
Yeah. That's not necessarily where I was going with that, but the thing is like ultimately Dr. Pepper is still my favorite soda, but every now and then I'm like, a Pibb would kind of hit right now, like because it's similar, but it's different.
I don't know that I would ever pick up a Pibb at the local gas station.
I think the way that it's hardly ever at gas stations, but since it's so rare around here, it exists, but it's hard to find. I get excited when a place has it, and like our Chipotle has Pibb, and so every time I go there, I'm not like, oh man, no Dr. Pepper. I'm like, oh cool, an opportunity to drink Pibb because I don't have to make the choice between Pibb and Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, it's for me, Pibb is like. If you have Pibb at a party, I'm fine. I'm not going to say anything. But if you have like Dr. Cola, I'm going to throw that shit in the garbage.
Here's my thing. Pibb is a much better analog to Dr. Pepper than Pepsi is to Coke.
Yeah.
And I don't even dislike Pepsi, but when people are like, is Pepsi okay? I'm like, these are very different sodas.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? Like, I know what you think you're doing, but no, they're different.
You're giving me the black soda you have instead of black soda I want, but they're not the same sodas.
That's like saying Dr. Pepper and Coke. And the reason that that's not the fact is that Dr. Pepper's always there. It doesn't matter if it's a Coke or a Pepsi place. It's Pepsi and Dr. Pepper or Coke and Dr. Pepper. That's how you know that they're not even remotely the same. Because no one would go, we don't have Coke. Would you like a Dr. Pepper? Also, if someone said, we don't have Dr. Pepper, would you like a Coke? I would be like, are you fun? Why would you even offer that? That's not even remotely the same thing.
No.
Yeah.
But what I hate is when they offer root beer. Because root beer is disgusting and it's not even close to Dr. Pepper. We don't have to litigate
that it's not
beer.
Close to Dr. Pepper. I agree with that. That is I don't think I've ever had anyone go, no, but we do have Barks. First of all, get that shit out of here.
Oh yeah. It's a lot of like, we don't have this, but we do have our house-made root beer that we've been brewing in the toilet downstairs. It's disgusting.
Dude, I like to try house-made root beers, but as often as they're amazing, they're awful. Like for every great one I have, I'm like, oh, this is not very good. Exactly. And that bums me out. And then what's worse is that sometimes I'll find one that I actually like, and then they'll stop doing it. Like Alamo Draft House used to do one that was actually really good, and we don't have an Alamo Draft House. So anytime we'd go out of town, if there's a good movie on, we go watch it at Alamo because I really like that setup. And I'd get their root beer, and then one day we went in there. I was like, "Y'all got the root beer?" And he's like, "No, we stopped doing that." I was like, "You son of a bitch."
You were the chosen one, Alamo Draft House.
You underestimate my power. No, it's
were supposed to destroy Barks, not join them.
I'm watching my wife kind of go through this right now because she doesn't really like Red Bull, but Red Bull's apparently got this Winterberry edition that she randomly found one day and tried and loves it. And for some reason, it's a limited edition flavor. For some reason, even though it's winter, you cannot find Winterberry anywhere anymore. So it's just like, she's just like, what the hell? The one Red Bull that I like. Mm-hmm. It's like you get me hooked on it, then it goes away. So
I don't know. I can't. I hate like restaurants. Like some places have Monster, and I would quit my job for that place any day. But like every once in a while,
hold on, Monster on tap?
Not on tap. I just mean they have the cans.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, dude, I don't think I've ever seen a Monster tap, and I kind of hope one exists. I don't even drink Monster. I don't drink energy drinks at all. Dude, but how crazy would it be to go into a place and just...
that would be so sick. That's a good idea for a restaurant. Like the energy drink at a restaurant, everything's super fast. It's all Monster.
Oh, shit, like you have a Red Bull tap?
Yeah, we have draft. We have draft energy drinks.
That's actually kind of sick. That'd be cool.
Would you like to try this IPM? It's an India Pale Monster.
Let me tell you though, if there are places that can make money even for a year, 2 years, or whatever, being a fucking oxygen bar. I don't know if you've seen those where it's like flavored oxygen. You can make money doing a fucking draft energy drink. Absolutely can.
I want to open a restaurant, or more correctly, I want to open a bar one day, and that might be my one thing, is that even if it's like a private like kegerator for me in the manager office, I'm gonna have a Monster on tap.
Like just you're gonna find someone who sells it in some form in which you can tap it.
Yeah, I can find a guy. He may work, at the local Denny's or something, but there's a guy who can get me a keg of Monster.
Dude, if not, this is what you go there and then you reach out to the company that makes Monster directly and you're like, listen, I have an opportunity for you.
Listen, I'll give you $200 for a keg of Monster every month.
Dude,
send it over.
Could you just imagine? Because I mean, it's been a long time since I've drank a Monster, but I mean, Monsters, you would consider them carbonated, right?
Yeah.
So hear me out. Even if not a keg, which I could see being a little difficult to pull off, what about a box of the syrup that you hook up to like
That would be
like a fountain machine. That
would be okay too. Yeah, that would be okay.
Yeah, that'd
too.
be interesting.
You're like, oh, we have Coke, Diet Coke, Monster, Pepsi, root beer,
Monster
Sprite.
Zero.
Yeah, Monster. It would be Monster Zero. There's no shot I'm putting green Monster on tap. Disgusting.
Dude, can you imagine cleaning that motherfucker?
Oh no.
Yeah, that'd be pretty rough. All right, we've derailed long enough, but that's just an interesting. As I was sipping away at the end of my Chipotle, I was like, wait a minute. All right, we're going to cover some news real quick that hit this week. There's not just like a whole lot of gigantic news. We're going to cover a couple pieces of news before we go to talking about the Game Awards. First thing we have up is from VGC. It's Dungeons & Dragons Dark Alliance is being delisted. Dark Alliance servers will go offline when the game is pulled from sale in early 2025. Now, you may be wondering, what game are we talking about? This is not Dark Alliance 1 or 2 that got remastered and released from the old PS2 Xbox versions. This is the one that came out, I think, about 2 years ago as a new Dark Alliance co-op game. I never got around to trying it because something just seemed off about it. Chris, I feel like I remember you trying this game out.
Yeah, I played it on Game Pass.
Are you surprised by this?
I didn't realize that there were servers to be shutting down, going to be honest.
I was about to say I didn't. Okay, I'm not surprised there's servers. But what I'm trying to understand right now is this game an always online game? Like, it's being delisted, and I don't know if that's just because there's licenses tied to it that the game's not doing well enough to want to support anymore. But like, if I buy this now, I'm very curious. It will remain playable offline and single player only. Okay, yeah. Yes. You can play the game single player. That's interesting. I love Dark Alliance 1 and 2, but it's funny coming off of Lego. This is like a series that I view as co-op. So I'll be really curious to see the single player include, like, is there couch co-op for this? And if not, what a fucking bummer. Because part of what makes Dark Alliance 1 and 2 from the PlayStation 2 so fun is that you don't need internet. You just hook up 2 controllers and you go about your fucking business. That's fun. I kind of am worried that if I bought this, I'm gonna look into it because I'm not opposed to playing it still. But
honestly, me too. That's what I've been kind of once I saw this, I kind of took a look and I was like, it's still $30, which is not the worst price. But I honestly am kind of looking to get into it because it looks like there's like 4 trophies that are online co-op and then it's just play it. So we might be able to smack those down. Yeah, you want to knock it out?
You know what? Let me see if it's on sale. You got to. I've got like $400 of PlayStation's or of Sony rewards credits that I got to get rid of before the 31st of December. This might be one of my picks.
Do it.
Throw $30 at it, knock out these trophies before the servers go down, and then go from there.
I'll do it with you. Get some pre-orders in. You'll be fine.
There we go. That's what I should do. Just pre-order my next few games.
Yeah.
So there you are. Not too surprised by that. I don't remember that game ever really catching fire like its predecessors did, which is something to be said about games that come back and try and use the really like the well-loved names of games that came before while not really being the same thing. One of my go-to examples of this, and I know some people really like this game, so I'm not even hating on it. It's one of the best ports ever for Vita, surprisingly, of a full, AAA console game. Need for Speed Most Wanted 2015 or whatever, 2013, whatever year it was. It's such a weird fucking game because it's just like, this is not really Most Wanted at all. but you wanted to benefit from this namesake, so you made a game and named it the same thing. And it was just weird. I mean, they kind of did that with like the same studio did that with like Hot Pursuit and Hot Pursuit 2, but those games were closer to the original Hot Pursuit games than Most Wanted was to the original Most Wanted. So I always thought that was a weird thing.
That's a little weird.
But let me not talk ill of your, because you're like a Hot Pursuit 2 like purist, right? That's like your go-to Need for Speed.
I do like that game a lot. Yeah.
I never played it, so I choose not to talk much about it. I just knew it was from a studio I didn't like their take on racing quite as much.
Well, I like the old one, not really the new one.
Oh, not really the new one. Yeah, the old PS1 one's great.
Because that's the thing. Like, I'm not a racing guy. Like, I think I am, but I'm not. And a big reason I liked that game was like my dad really liked that game. So it was one of those,
Yeah.
like, I think I've told the story, but like I would come home and he would have spent the day getting gold on every race on my Xbox. And he's never done that again in my life. And ironically, he never shared that time with me. He did that shit all by himself. So
to be fair, I assume you were coming home and taking over the console. He was like, I got to get these golds in while this bastard's at school.
well, but that's what I'm saying is like the joke I was just making is like he could have he's the fucking adult, dude. He could have waited and be like, we're going to do this shit together. He's like, no, I'm going to fucking I'm going to show my kid who's boss. I got all the golds. Fuck you.
I'll give my dad a little bit of credit. We played the NASCAR games together, and whenever he first, I remember he got his own house after the divorce, and we got, I should have talked about this last week. It's a good PlayStation memory right here. It's just a fun one. He got Gran Turismo 3 A-Spec, PS2's first Gran Turismo game, and he had managed to save up enough money to buy a steering wheel and pedal set so he could play the game that way. But back then, it was really, you couldn't online shop. So it was really difficult to find like a racing setup. So most people were just like clamping this to like the edge of like tables and shit. My dad built a PVC frame with a wood top that he could just mount that onto and set the pedals within so that the pedals couldn't slide forward, but the thing couldn't slide back. And then basically you just put our dining room chair, you hooked them over the front or I guess technically behind the PVC pipe. And that way, when you're going to press into the pedals and it's trying to push it away from you, it's just catching the legs of the chair and it won't move. And that was like how I played games for a long time. I used that same steering wheel from the PS2 to play, I couldn't believe it worked, to play the PS3 version of Need for Speed Carbon. I beat the entire Need for Speed Carbon with a fucking steering wheel, a PS2 steering wheel.
That's pretty dope. I like that.
Yeah. That was sick. And you know how hard it was doing those fucking... Did you ever play Carbon? Like, since you're not as much of a racing person. Carbon had downhill drifts. And the cars were just super loose. So trying to do that shit on a steering wheel, I felt like a god when I beat the game.
Nobody can touch me.
That's right. I felt like I was in Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift.
Grip the best one?
Yeah, the best one. Clearly.
Yeah. No, I have no issue with that sentence.
I'm proud of you, Chris. All right, next thing we got on the list here, we have Microsoft's CEO coming out. This is also VGC. He says being an Xbox player means playing games on, quote, all your devices. So this is, of course, in line with their recent advertisements that if you watched the Game Awards, you probably saw of this is an Xbox and showing Xboxes, laptops, Steam Decks, any kind of anything that you can find, smart TVs, cell phones. So that is their big push right now. But Satya Nadella has reaffirmed his plan for Xbox going forward is to allow players to, quote, enjoy Xbox on all devices. In recent years, Microsoft has pivoted from competing directly on the console front to focus on different strands such as Xbox cloud streaming. Recently, the company introduced a new marketing campaign titled This is an Xbox, in which it highlighted the Xbox's strategy moving forward is making Xbox games available on virtually all entertainment devices via the cloud. While this caused concern among some console owners who worried that this strategy would take focus away from its traditional offerings, Microsoft has since doubled down on the plans. As spotted by GameFile, Microsoft addressed the future plans of its gaming business during last week's annual shareholder meeting. Quote, shareholders are also interested in our gaming business, said Brett Iverson, Microsoft's vice president of investor relations. Quote, our acquisition of Activision Blizzard King. Satya, how are you feeling about the early return on that investment and the progress on our overall gaming strategy over the last year? Satya Nadella replied, I'm feeling very, very good about where we're at in gaming. In fact, right now, this is like peak season in gaming, obviously with Black Ops and the new Call of Duty. It's been fantastic to see the launch and the marketing around it, the buzz around it, all the love for gaming. So I think that this kind of just builds the foundation for the other piece of news that I think really butts up well to this. And this is that Xbox are essentially going ahead and saying Xbox won't have exclusives going forward. Now, this is very important to say. This isn't necessarily from the mouth, but according to Windows Central executive editor Jez Corden, who's a big Xbox fan, who discussed his understanding of Microsoft's first-party strategy in a series of X posts this weekend, or Twitter, for those of you who know what that is. Xbox won't have exclusives going forward. Everything is timed exclusive at most, he claimed. If some games are exclusive, it's going to be incidental at best. The case-by-case argument is by and large going to be multi-plat, timed, and maybe a few, very few outliers that are actually exclusive. Responding to a user who said they didn't believe Xbox's upcoming Fable game would come to PlayStation, Corden wrote, "That game was monstrously expensive. It might not be day one, but it'll come with the current plan in place, in my opinion." So, won't go too much further. This is laying the bed of someone who's very close and gives a lot of foresight on what's happening in Xbox, does get some good tips, is saying that it seems like this is the way moving forward. And I think one thing we can go ahead and kind of slip in here, Chris, that I think speaks to this is during the Game Awards, we got the reveal finally for the follow-up to The Outer Worlds, which is a game that Obsidian has been making since their purchase from Microsoft. And early on, it was stated from people within Microsoft that that game would be exclusive.
Yep.
And as you may have noticed, the very end of that trailer clearly and cleanly states PlayStation 5. And it doesn't even state it staggered or anything. It is PlayStation 5. Now, they may come back later and say it's going to come out on Xbox first for a number of period, but they are not hiding at all that it's coming to PlayStation. And I would say that if they're showing that it's coming to PlayStation now, it's coming day and date.
That was what I was going to say. There's no way they would have shown it there, even if it was like a 2-day exclusive, right? They would have they would have just hidden it until it comes out on PlayStation tomorrow on launch day. You know what I mean?
Well, the only reason I'll say, just to give credit, is that they clearly didn't do that with Indiana Jones. They announced it for Xbox, and then they came before the game even came out and said it's coming to PlayStation just later. And I think that they still would have enjoyed some period of time of touting it as an Xbox exclusive before eventually saying it's also coming to PlayStation at a later date.
Well, and I think what this tells you is that The Outer Worlds is coming out in October, November, and Avowed is coming out May, March.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And that really seems like a good balance between those as well. For them, their gaming business, not kind of devouring a similar market share place. And honestly, I think it makes sense for this to hit PlayStation day and date, because I've always thought that their own remarks of games that had a legacy of being on PlayStation to begin with, I always thought that this game fit. Now, of course, their IP, they own it at this standpoint, their IP to do what they want to with it, but I always thought that this game was a missed opportunity to back what they were saying about legacy games, because The Outer Worlds, whether they wish they could have not done that or not, Private Division published that game. That game was published multi-platform. I think that game always should have been that way. And I also, one last thing to add into this, there's a lot of talk going around, and this has been kind of known for a while, that Hellblade did not necessarily do very well, and it did not perform the way that Microsoft was hoping it would. And basically, there's a sentiment going around that Microsoft was disappointed, and they think it was a mistake not to bring the game to PlayStation day and date. And I think that adds into the exact same thing I'm talking about, where I don't mind that they did it, but I think in sticking with the way that they were talking about, Hellblade 1 had a history on PlayStation, more so than Xbox.
It was exclusive,
but at the very least, it was. And it was actually a deal with Sony. Sony helped fund the original game to some degree in order to get that going. I think that game should have always been planned to be a PlayStation game. But at the same time, I understand Microsoft were in a position where they were still trying to do the exclusive game, and they bought developers who gave them a way to get exclusive. So I don't blame them. But it's funny seeing all this kind of go down in post and being like, maybe you should have just made this call a little earlier. But I can't really ding Microsoft for taking a good swing at trying to have a few exclusives and seeing if their luck could change. But I think that they've seen right now that niche games like a Hellblade 2 are not going to do it. So,
yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just interesting, like kind of finding out. And then Satya said it plainly today, so I feel like we're not even speculating anymore. It's just interesting. Like, you gotta look at the last couple of years in hindsight and be like, man, that Activision really fucked you guys over. Because I think going to Outer Worlds, I think the big thing with the Outer Worlds is that was announced when Microsoft was cocky about what they were doing, right? So of course it was going to be PlayStation exclusive. That's why when they show Elder Scrolls again, everyone will conveniently forget that they said it would be Xbox exclusive, you know? When they bought Bethesda, it was $7 billion. That is a drop in the bucket to Microsoft. Or $7 billion. But, when you 10x that and you go, okay, we just spent $70 billion, that's when the floodgates have to close and you're like, okay, well, now we need to make money because you just bought one of the biggest things ever. That was one of the biggest purchases in gaming for sure, but I think in general it's probably up there. Bigger than anything Sony's ever done, right? So,
as far as I know, yeah.
I just think it's fascinating to look at, like, how many people were like, "Oh, this is good for Xbox. This is good," and in reality, it turned Xbox into the world's most powerful publisher. But that's about it.
I think that's a really difficult conversation to have over. Okay, I think the way that Microsoft clearly wanted people to take it was that they were going to be a powerhouse in the more traditional way.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I think that even if it wasn't necessarily the outcome they wanted, I think that there's a decent argument to be made that it is ultimately true that the buying these things was for the best for Xbox, not because you're building a really strong exclusivity thing or even a strong ability to make Game Pass very tantalizing. Because I think as we're seeing, they finally kind of admitted that the way Game Pass was structured was not working and it was not going to be sustainable, and that they had to tier it off to make it to where only at a certain dollar amount are you getting games day one. There's a limitation to this, and then kind of raising the prices across the board in notion with that. But I'd say that it's really similar to something that happened around here recently, where we had 2 hospitals here originally. And one of them I used to work at, 12 years ago, has kind of consistently been doing really bad. And it's been bouncing between owners and owners and owners that aren't anywhere around here. They're just buying it, trying to flip it, essentially. And it never ends up working out. Then they were supposed to build a new hospital. They started building a new hospital under their most recent owner, and then that owner went bankrupt. Then the hospital stopped construction entirely. And now the new hospital that's like half finished is being bought by someone else. And this other hospital that was not doing too well and basically didn't have an owner at that point got bought out by our other local hospital. And in that thing, a lot of people wanted to criticize the other hospital that bought them out and being like, hey, you're not bringing on every single person, because they basically said, listen, we're going to interview everybody and we're going to try and keep as many people as we can reasonably keep, but some people will have to be made redundant because we have enough people for some of the things that we're doing. And I saw people complaining and saying like, I hate this. I hate that this hospital bought that hospital. And I'm like, I understand that you're stressed and that maybe some people who had jobs around here have lost their job as a result of this. But at the end of the day, that hospital was not going to stay open without a purchase. And it was either going to shut down and everyone would have lost their job, or it was going to get bought yet again by someone who was probably going to go bankrupt again. And so what I'm getting at there is that with the Xbox of it all, I actually think that maybe buying all these things and kind of forcing themselves to have to become the biggest publishers, I can foresee this being ultimately the best thing to keep Xbox alive, because I think if Xbox kept on a downward trajectory despite spending this money and didn't change their plans, that I can see Xbox getting shuttered. I know Xbox has been around a long time. It's like the one thing that Microsoft put out and did not kill within a 5-year period. But that is the exception. And I do think that if they had spent enough money and didn't change their mind, Microsoft would have just been like, we're done with the Xbox brand. If we're going to stay in gaming, we're just going to do Microsoft gaming. We're going to kill Xbox. So if you truly like the Xbox brand and you want that history to kind of stay alive with that naming, This may suck. You may feel like your purchase of an Xbox was kind of, you got tricked. And I don't think that's an unfair way to feel. But this actually might be the best way for you to still have some of what made you like Xbox continue to move forward. Just by also sacrificing some of the things that you also enjoyed about Xbox along the way. So this is crazy, but I think that Chris has been saying, and I think I've been pretty well backing him up, that I've always kind of seen this as a writing on the walls thing. And I think the more I see this, I wouldn't be surprised if Hellblade is announced relatively soon for PlayStation. I would not be surprised if Starfield is announced relatively soon for PlayStation. And I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing the likes of Avowed getting a delayed PlayStation release 3 to 6 months down the road from its official release.
Yeah. So a couple things. I think in terms of what I was saying, like, I don't want to make it sound like I think this is a bad thing for Microsoft. This is a bad thing for Twitter, right? But that's it. Because Microsoft as a company, this is going to turn them into a powerhouse in the industry more than they ever were, right? They were an industry titan because they had the fourth most important console on the market, but still four, they had their audience and they were publishing games of some quality. And now they have these things, but the Xbox is doing worse than honestly that most people could probably imagine. Like, I never would have suspected that they probably won't hit 50 million units. Right. And so I think when you go from, hey, we're done making hardware, we're a third party publisher, we'll let Tencent come in for competition for Sony, that for them as a company is probably the best thing they possibly could do, given the trajectory of their console business. The only aspect of this that we've never discussed is like, oh, what happens to Sony? But, we've seen Sony with hubris, and we'll see what they do. But yeah, there's not much really to that. The company's going to company, and they're still, I don't think they'll be the last one forever,
Just to clarify what you're saying, that you don't think that the Xbox will be the last person to try and throw their hat into the console ring?
Yeah. Because I think at some point we're going to get a Steam machine.
Yeah,
that'll go up there. If Microsoft bows out, I see no reason why a company like Tencent wouldn't be like, hey, buy our console. You get 1/2 of a Genshin Impact credit every day you have this thing, But we'll see. It's all interesting. But I don't know. I'm excited. I think my thing with Avowed and Outer Worlds 2 is that I think if Avowed was coming out in the fall, that it would be the one that was day and date with PlayStation, and the Outer Worlds would be the delayed one. I think that the reason that they were confident putting day one is because they have that extra almost year of time that Avowed doesn't.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if in the fall, you know what? I'm going to make this bet. I'm going to bet myself. If you want to take part, you can. On Outer Worlds 2 release date, there will be a Bethesda or our Western RPG triple pack of Starfield, Avowed, and Outer Worlds that you can buy for $250 on day one.
Yeah, I'm not taking that bet. I think that's a ridiculous product. But I think if the ultimate thing that you're saying is that throughout 2025, we could expect to see all three of those games hit PlayStation.
Yeah, I'm
more following you there. The only reason I'm curious if they won't is that if Outer Worlds 2 is day and date, and they do consider it to be anywhere near the market of Avowed, then you would not want to delay the release of Avowed to hit near Outer Worlds 2 if you want it to perform as good as it can on PlayStation.
I think that's
so. I would almost say that if Avowed is like a March game, like a March-April, then maybe it's like a July-August release. But I don't know, because realistically, where Outer Worlds is coming, I kind of agree with you. I think Outer Worlds is going to be like probably an October at the latest title. But I don't know.
So then,
of course, this is all speculation.
No, yeah, but at that point, you have to ask yourself, like, so then, do you think Starfield is exclusive for another year, or do you think Avowed is exclusive for another year? Like, that's
what I was going to say. Is I think if Avowed isn't coming yet, I think the game I expect to see first is Starfield, and I ultimately think that because it's been longer, it really needs the revival in sales more than Avowed will, and then it'll allow time for Avowed to get a PlayStation release worked up as well, and they can kind of stagger these to probably do like a Avowed hits Xbox in March, let's say, and let's say around that same time, I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere between March and June you see Starfield hit PlayStation. And then you have day and date Outer Worlds 2 on PlayStation and Xbox, and then maybe like a May of next, or maybe like a March of next year, you get Avowed on PlayStation. Yeah. And I do actually think Avowed is going to be a good enough and big enough game for them that they can take the 1 year. You get what I'm saying? Like, I think that they can afford a year, whereas I think waiting another year, and I'd love to be wrong, but I even think Starfield didn't necessarily do as well as they were hoping. It's Starfield was not Skyrim again.
Yeah.
And so I think ultimately, exactly. Yeah, from a sales standpoint, it wasn't. And so I think what's going on here is that ultimately they do need to get a game like Starfield across the aisle sooner so that it doesn't run the risk of becoming irrelevant. And I know that sounds mean, but I don't think that you're going to see the tail Skyrim or Fallout 4 had with Starfield. I would love to be wrong, and maybe with enough updates and DLC, Starfield will actually have that tail. But I think if you kind of hear the talk about it, more people talk about Fallout 4 and Skyrim today still than I've ever heard talk about Starfield. And that doesn't mean I think Starfield did terribly. Starfield's a new IP. It's a little bit harder to break through, and I don't think that it necessarily did everything that they were aiming for as good as possible. And I think that was reflected in the way people viewed the game. People enjoyed it. I do think it did well. It's a Bethesda game. Ultimately, it was always destined to do pretty well. But I don't think it was what they hoped. I think that they were hoping that they had it at the very least another, Skyrim or Fallout on their hands, if not better, and they didn't. Or it doesn't seem. I would love to be proven wrong by that, but I think that's difficult because Game Pass obscures those numbers so much that the metrics are hard to really show. So I'm using this as like a word of mouth. I don't ever hear as much scuttlebutt about Starfield.
So I have a question for you. So do you think is maybe gut check on this whole conversation, right? Do you think that all new games are going to be PlayStation day and date? And but then the old stuff, I shouldn't say all new games. There will be case by cases, I'm sure, as Jez said, but the vast majority of them will be on day and date. Do you think that they leave the old stuff in the dust? Or are we looking at a 2025 where Xbox is publishing 1 to 2 games a month on PlayStation?
So when you're saying old here, you're talking like Xbox One games?
I'm talking about Xbox in general, right? Like,
yeah. But I'm assuming that your viewpoint is like, do we start seeing like Halo Infinite coming out, and then 2 or 3 months later, Gears of War collection coming out, and then 1 to 2 months later,
Because are they going to be trying to capture like anyone who's never played Gears, right? And it's like, okay, well, Gears D-Day is also next year, early 2026. Sure. So in February, obviously February is aggressive, but in some point in the next year, here's a Gears collection where you can play all 3 of these games. And then do they do that with Halo MCC? Do they do that with Flight Sim? Do we get a Forza Horizon, a Forza 5? Because what's interesting to me is that wrapping the whole conversation in a nice little bow, if Microsoft does that while they're spooling up all their new shit to come to PlayStation more or less day and date, they already become the biggest publisher on PlayStation.
Yeah.
Halo MCC is telling 10 million copies on PlayStation. I'll put that money down on 10 million right now.
Yeah. So I'll tell you that I think it's hard for me to give a gut answer that I think is 100% confident. What I would say is I would not bat an eye in surprise if what you just said is some form, or if it's true to some degree. I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing some of these franchises come as close as reasonable in terms of older games like Master Chief Collection, like Gears 1 through 3, or at the very least, D-Day is interesting because I think it's bringing back the old cast and it's set in a different. It's like a prequel to even 1. So you could argue that maybe they won't see the thing, but I could also argue seeing like, hey, let's get people excited by it by putting this series out. But I think that there's a decent chance on that, and I wouldn't be surprised. What I do feel a little more confident about, I think that the vast majority of games that don't have some kind of legacy on other systems, like the Outer Worlds, I think most of them will not be day and date on PlayStation for new games moving forward. I think that they'll probably do what they're already doing with this kind of roughly 3 to 5 month exclusivity window, maybe 6 month exclusivity window on Xbox before they come somewhere else. I think that they'll probably go closer to 3 months so that they can enjoy a boom, have a reason to go get this game on Game Pass, and then double that tail up when they say, hey, our game's releasing on PlayStation, but remember, you can play it as part of your Game Pass subscription for no extra money. And I think that they'll try and use that as a way to build IP recognition, build excitement for games by having them across everywhere, but still try to be able to double dip and say, come pull into Game Pass. This is our avenue to get you there. And if not, you can still buy it on whatever system. And we have you coming or going. So that's the only thing I'd say. I think the Outer Worlds makes a lot of sense because I think that they were able to truly look and go, look, the Outer Worlds 1 existed on PlayStation. We can see what the sales numbers were on PlayStation 4. It did really well on PlayStation 4. There's people who clearly will be surprised because they don't follow the news as much if this game was exclusive to Xbox. So why don't we just go ahead and bite the bullet now, day and date it because the previous one was, go about our business. But I would expect that if Fable comes, Fable will have an exclusivity window. I think with Avowed, it'll have an exclusivity window and it'll eventually come. And I think that goes across the board. The one series that I really debate whether or not it'll make its way over, because I wouldn't be surprised if they try to be like, we got to hold on to something. And I think the gut feeling to holding on to something for a lot of people will probably be Halo, because it is just intrinsically what people think of when they think Xbox. And I think that that's a good thing. But for some reason, my gut tells me that the one series they might not bother with is going to be Forza. Because Forza does surprisingly well on the limited platforms it's already on.
I think the issues that I have with your argument, not that they're wrong or even ill-formed, is just that if you listen to Satya and you listen to even just the conversation with Jez, I think I was just looking at his tweet and it was like, very few, if any, exclusives at all. It'll be day and date or a small timed exclusivity window.
Yeah, that's why I say I think 3 months is kind of a really tight exclusivity window.
So that to me, like
in an industry where you're used to 1 year exclusivity windows at the minimum,
to me, it's just I think the exclusivities that we will get beyond day and date are just wasn't ready, because that's what he was saying is like. Xbox is still spinning their teams up to do simultaneous development. So a lot of stuff that's in the pipeline now is probably, it will have some exclusivity windows. And I think the thing that you can say is like everything, even like your Halo example, or even Forza doing reasonably well. First of all, Forza's been rumored to come to PlayStation for months.
It has.
The rumor is that it's done and they're just waiting, which doesn't make much sense because you're going to be on to the next one pretty soon.
Same.
I think everything you're saying is shot down a little bit just by the idea of, Halo's going to do very well on Xbox. What's it going to do on PlayStation?
Well, let me add you a quick context. And the only reason is because I think you're hitting on something that I was going to touch on. And that is that I am viewing this as like the next 5 years. And I think throughout that 5-year period, the amount of times that games are day and date will slowly move. And I do think that eventually you will see Xbox fully give up the ghost with exclusivity. But I think they'll see this generation through. And since they're already still very recently talking about making a next-gen console and a next-gen handheld, I still think that they have a little bit of a thought process going on that they want to try and find ways to make people excited for them. Now, it does also seem like they're doing some different ideas, like messing around with the idea of letting you have different storefronts on your Xbox. So maybe letting you buy games from Steam on your Xbox hardware, which I'm going to say, I'm not saying they won't do it. And they've kind of like hinted around at that being a possibility. They haven't said they're doing it, but it's one of those things where it's a lot like what I've always said. I think Game Pass coming to PlayStation is just a hard sell. And it's because why invest the research and development into a piece of hardware that you are seeing the least amount of returns on when people buy something for. If someone buys a game through Steam on your hardware that you made, and you're only getting that 30%.
I'd be willing to bet
instead of getting, or you know what I mean, you're not even getting that. Really, it's just funny how the way it goes. You're not getting the money that you would have been getting for every game sold. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
it's like, arguably speaking, if they buy a game that has nothing to do with Xbox, besides the fact that it's playable on that system, what is there structurally, at least right now, to give Xbox any money? If you buy a third-party game on Steam and Microsoft didn't publish it, ostensibly, unless a new deal is struck somehow where they can recognize it's on an Xbox, Microsoft would get 0% of that sale. And that's a really weird, curious thing to think, because it fights so much against what we've known to be the console market. Now, Xbox has clearly stated that the traditional console methodology has not been working for them.
Yeah.
So who knows? They might do drastic measures.
I see that. I've always thought that rumor is kind of insane and doesn't make much sense, because what does Sony do in that situation? Because Sony's not going to be okay with you running God of War on your next gen Xbox because it went through the Steam store. Go fuck yourself. They're not going to let it happen. And they're probably
part of me makes me wonder, do they really even care? Because their PC thing already is staggered. So it doesn't matter, since they're only doing day and date for games that are and I still think that this is the right call. They're only doing day and date for games that are live service. Yeah. I don't think they really give a shit. I'm gonna be dead honest. I don't think they care if someone's playing God of War Ragnarok on their next gen Xbox.
Yes, they absolutely do. Because then it becomes the best. Then a Steam account and an Xbox becomes the best place to play.
A lot, maybe, but here's the real kicker, and this is the only reason I think it's really hard, is a lot of that seems to be tied up with the idea that the next console from Microsoft is going to be a lot more PC-like. And that's going to come down to, does PC-like interfere with the simple plug, play, turn on, I'm playing a game without having to do much thinking, without having to do driver updates and stuff like that. And I don't have a gut feeling on that. I don't know what they could possibly be coming up with, but I want to say that I would have never guessed that the Switch would have been what Nintendo was coming up with. So part of me is a little excited at the thought of what weird ass hybrid thing could Xbox really be cooking up as their next piece of hardware that might truly be interesting and make it almost impossible to predict conversationally what might come about. And that's the only thing. I get where you're coming from in that it makes it easier to do that, but it all comes down to how that actually goes down, and still what that means from a third party. Because I mean, in many ways, that should make Xbox very popular right now, because you can buy games on PC and play them on your Xbox, even though you're not buying them through Steam. And that's because it's the Microsoft Store, and the Microsoft Store is awful on PC. I literally tried downloading the Master Chief Collection through Game Pass on my PC when I had Game Pass, and it would not install. It kept fucking up. And then I looked it up. Apparently, super common issue. So many people stopped trying to even do that and just went and bought the Master Chief Collection instead from Steam, just because it worked immediately, no problems. And that's a common issue. People had that issue with Hellblade when they were trying to play Hellblade through there. Some people had that with Halo Infinite. The Microsoft Store is not good, and it has a lot of issues. And if they're going to try and make their next console be a little more PC focused, there's a lot of problems with PC and a lot of problems with Windows 11 and that are not figured out. And so it's really difficult to figure out from a hardware side what they're looking at and what they're doing. I get what you're saying. I just think it's really hard to tell if Sony would care. I get the intuition to think that they would, but I don't know.
Sony needs to sell consoles. I think they would do everything in their power to fight that.
And I'm with you that they need to sell consoles, but if now, what would you say right now would be the thing? Is it just because Xbox can't download the Steam games to a simplistic plug and play into your TV thing?
No,
is that what's stopping that from being an issue for Sony right now? Because PS5 is still clearly doing really well.
No, I think it becomes a completely different calculus when you look at someone and say, this machine plays your Xbox games, it plays your PC games, and then in max 2 years, it also plays your PlayStation games.
Yeah, sure.
It's a Microsoft console. That immediately makes it the better decision. Unless you're someone like me or you, who's like an active trophy hunter, Why are you buying on PlayStation?
Well, and right now you can get trophies on PC now.
Yeah.
Which would ostensibly allow you to get trophies on that Xbox.
Yep. So there's just no way. I don't think.
So let me ask you this. Let me ask you this then. Even following through all your thing, let's say that you're right. Sony does care. What can they do? I'm being dead serious. Like, what can they do to stop the games? Stop selling on Steam?
Yeah, they can pull all their games
on PC
off
entirely.
Steam. They could, or they could just make it not compatible. I'm sure you could do that, but I just think that's such a. The thing with that rumor is like beyond Sony. I don't know why Steam would do it. I don't know why Xbox would do it. All for the reasons you laid out. Why is Steam going to pay a cut to Microsoft that they don't need to, especially when they can just make a console themselves? Why would Microsoft let Steam sell on the console? Or why would Microsoft let them do like an Amazon where you can't buy Kindle books on the Amazon app because iPhone takes a charge. So you have to go to the website, buy the game, and then you play it, and then you can use it on your phone. So to me, it just doesn't. That rumor just doesn't make sense. That sounds to me like if Phil is actually saying that, that sounds to me like I'm trying to justify a console to my boss.
Well, I have one last thing I want to say on that, because one of the things I've been waiting to see as something that really could shake up the games industry in a way that's unprecedented is if a lot of the regulation stuff that's happening right now on phones, which is stating that Microsoft or that is stating that Google and Apple have to allow other marketplaces to be downloaded onto phones so that people can buy things without having to go through the Google Play Store, therefore letting Google miss out on their 30% or whatever for housing the storefront. If that's happening on the phones and the arguments that are being used there can even reasonably translate to consoles, is there a way in which regulation could actually make it to where consoles have to allow more than one marketplace? And if so, man, that's going to be interesting, because regulation has been doing some crazy stuff on phones. I don't know if you've seen regulations basically forcing Apple to make iMessage compatible with RCS so that there's no more of this compatibility issues between text messages. It will be fully compatible. Apple basically got forced to do it. Apple basically got forced to stop using lightning cables and use USB-C because the regulation got, at least in Europe, got told you have to make these devices with this. We are regulating that there can only be one type of charger to cut down on electronics waste. And so what do? They change it for everywhere because it doesn't make sense to manufacture two phones. So you keep seeing these changes happen little by little. And I really do wonder, can these make the jump to the console market? If they do, the console market's revenue structure completely falls apart. I don't know what the hell happens. I don't know if people even want to make consoles anymore, because if it's kind of like how Ubisoft, all the launchers on PC that haven't done nearly as well as Steam. At that point, what do you do? Because no one fucking likes Uplay or whatever the hell it's called now, Ubisoft Connect or whatever. Yeah. No one likes when EA forces you to open Origin or whatever to play the launchers for that. It's annoying. So all that to say, it is wild to think that regulation could have a vast impact on the way that the market goes, and no one would be able to fight it because regulation would be dictating it. Crazy.
It is crazy. But
so we'll see what ends up happening. Sony themselves might be forced to allow Microsoft's the Microsoft store as a storefront on PlayStation. That would be so fucking weird.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. It's an interesting.
The big thing there is what would draw people if that future were to come. What would be the deciding factor to draw people towards hardware moving at that point? Because at that point, you could play Xbox games on PlayStation and vice versa. And so what would make PlayStation or Xbox or anyway, if all are on that same level playing field, do you think it would kind of go on the way it's already been going because people like the UI for PlayStation and stuff better? Or what would happen? It's hard to think about, but it's interesting.
I just think the second that deal's announced, Sony completely stops developing PC games. That's all. That's just all I think happens.
That's one of those things we need to put a pin in. And if it ever does happen on the Xbox side specifically, like we're talking about, if they allow multiple storefronts, to see how quickly before Sony makes a statement in regards to it.
Yeah. I'd be interested to see it.
Yeah.
But
so my gut would tell me that Sony has some inkling of if this is truly happening behind the scenes. Sony knows to some degree.
Yeah, definitely.
And that they're preparing for what that inevitability would be if they can do anything about it. So let's move on to the next and last piece of news before we go back over the Game Awards. And this is quick and easy. Sony has confirmed that it is interested in Kodokawa. We originally got Kodokawa saying that this rumor was true. So as you know, they are the Japanese conglomerate that owns a bunch of anime, bunch of manga IP, as well as Elden Ring developer From Software. So yes, following these reports, Sony has confirmed that discussions had taken place, but no decision has been made. And Sony does not want to further comment on it outside of an initial statement of intent to buy was made, and they are not saying much outside of that. So there may still come the day where we see Sony soak up a considerable ability to make manga and anime IP into whatever they want, as well as gain a treasured developer at this point. That'll be interesting. Yeah. The video game industry continues to be hard to predict. And I just want to take this opportunity to restate that I don't necessarily think that this is an inherently good thing, but it very well could happen. So do what you will with that information. Chris,
Brett,
it is time for us to discuss what happened at the 10th anniversary. Oh,
I just remembered something. We have to do a quick little segment first. We have to go through your PlayStation wrap up.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, yeah. Hold on. We can do this. I looked through it myself. There we go. PlayStation wrap up. All right. So my quick thing, and not that it should be any surprise. It's so funny. I meant to send the screenshot to you just because I thought it was hilarious. Of 3 months in a row of Persona 5 just being the game because it's all I played essentially.
Yeah.
You are kidding me. It's still saying it can't connect to the server. Something wrong with my laptop?
Maybe.
Well, I know that I shared it in our Discord, so let's see if I'm still here. Let's go. All right. So I played 60 games in 2024, 53 of which were PS5 and 7 of which were PS4. I hate that this doesn't track Vita or PS3 games, so this is not a conclusive list at all. Just want to throw that out there. My first game of the year and first platinum of the year was Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, there we have it. Next up, top 5 games is a Persona 5 Royal at 147 hours, 87 hours for number 2 for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Stellar Blade in number 3 for 61 hours. 4 is fucking Cult of the Lamb for 57 hours. And whenever I saw this, I remembered that my crazy ass came off of Cult of the Lamb and went to, after spending way too much time in Cult of the Lamb, and then played Persona 5. I don't think Persona 5 did not get given a good opportunity in that. I'm very willing to say that. That doesn't necessarily mean that I think anything I've said about it I would take back. But man,
I don't think
that game got a rough rap.
I feel like you should play it again. Just give it another shot, you know?
Never going to happen. Anyway, Helldivers 2 was my 5th game coming in for 51 hours.
Damn. Hell yeah.
Yeah, so my gaming style was role player, so RPGs were my primary. My game of the month for January was Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, shout out. Game of the month for February, Ghost of New Eden, Banishers. Top for March was Rebirth. Balatro was my game of the month for April. Stellar Blade for May. Dave the Diver for June. Far Cry 4 for July. Cult of the Lamb for August. Cult of the Lamb for September. And then the rest of the year is just Persona 5.
We love that.
Yep. So let's see. 935 hours played, at least across the ones that actually get tracked. This was kind of cool. 153 of my hours were played on the Portal. I think it's cool they tracked that. Yeah, and then unfortunately, PlayStation VR 2 only got 3 hours of play this year because of my broken controller. All 3 hours of that are Gran Turismo. I earned 1,182 trophies and got 32 platinums by the time that this wrapped.
Wow.
My trophy level increased to 27 levels.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Big numbers.
I got a lot of trophy milestones, so I'm not going to go through all of those, but it was pretty interesting seeing how that went down. 85 multiplayer hours, 57 parties joined, 6 new friends, and 25 messages sent.
Wow. Look
Yep.
at you. So what was your
16
total?
campaigns for PlayStation Stars. And so anyway, what do you mean by total? Sorry.
Your total playtime. Did I just miss you say that?
Oh, yeah. It was like 935 hours, I think.
Yeah, not bad at all.
Not bad. This year, honestly, I got to play a lot less than I thought I would.
Mm-hmm.
This has been one of those years where I'm like, is this just what becoming an adult is? Or did I just have a particularly interesting set of events? Because like,
I mean,
for
you
like
built
3
a
months,
house.
I busted ass on a house. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really think that kind of, I don't know. I'm still feeling the impact from that for the rest of the year.
I can imagine. Yeah.
So, and I'm not done. I have more to do. Like this weekend, I'm probably putting the final bit of flooring into that house. Like there's flooring in there, but I'm covering it with something a lot nicer. So there you have it, Chris. But now it is time to discuss the Game Awards as well as kind of see where we checked off on your little game that you created for us for our predictions. So going to start off by just kind of free floating, conversating about what we thought about the Game Awards. I just talked for a bit, Chris. So I'm going to go ahead and throw it over to you. We don't have. You can go into any games that you want to talk to, and we can kind of free flow it from there. But what I want to start with is, generally speaking, I don't think it's wrong to say that both of us kind of had reservations about how excited we might be from an event like this. Do you think that's fair to say?
Mostly, I think it seems like I would probably have been more excited than you, but
yeah,
I don't know. I always look forward to these things, even when I don't expect big things. And this was a year where I kind of expected it to be pretty fun.
Yeah. And I mean, of course, when you have a 10-year anniversary, you expect them to do something. And let's go ahead. So throughout this, I mean, what was your thoughts on the length of the event, which is always a point of controversy? Some people don't mind. Some people really do. What did you think about all of the extra skits and basically how the thing was structured, who they chose to bring out, where the endorsements were, where they focused on games or where they didn't focus on games? How did all that kind of land with you?
I thought it was actually pretty well paced. It didn't. Towards the end, I started to feel like, holy shit, this has been like 4 hours of my day because I watched it live. So
sure, yeah,
it was a long trek, but it never felt boring because almost every game I thought was interesting. So there was never a moment, and I mean, the show started off so insane for me that I was like, okay, this is just gonna be great. And then I knew halfway through the show what the final announcement was going to be, and I was excited. So I don't know. I enjoyed almost every trailer that came out. The Aaron Paul, Laura Bailey thing was really weird to watch.
Well, first of all, Laura Bailey is very pretty.
Oh,
and it is hard to look at her. And I know they were playing it up, but I was like, man, that's a lucky. Aaron Paul's a lucky guy right now because at one point I was like,
so
she's giving
sexual.
him surprisingly puppy dog eyes. Like, I don't know. Yeah, like you said, it was very sexual. And I know that they were just playing that up, but it was interesting.
But what I didn't understand, I didn't even understand why, because not like they were showing like this fantasy role-playing game where you can sleep with your parties. You're like a fucking police dispatcher on mobile. And you guys are making me uncomfortable and horny at the Game Awards. Like, I don't understand what you're doing.
Yeah.
But I thought the Harrison Ford thing was pretty cool. Although it was so clear that somebody paid him because he didn't know what the fuck he was doing at the Game Awards. It didn't seem like.
So now you got me curious because, like I told you, I watched the official stream on YouTube. So just kind of giving a little bit of thought process behind it. It fell on card night, and I knew I was going out of town the weekend. I decided to forego. Usually we do it at my house for card night, but we've been able to do it elsewhere. We didn't have a spot where we could have the TV up watching it while we were playing games like we usually do. So I decided to wait. Then Friday hit. We went out of town for my wife's birthday. We were out until late Sunday. And so when I got back, I was like, okay, now I'm going to watch it. I didn't want to interrupt my time with my wife, which was very well spent. I'm glad I got to do. So it just hit at a bad time. So I watched the official thing, but I thought what I thought was weird is a few things that I know happened didn't I didn't realize how many were missing. I realized that the Witcher 4 trailer was nowhere in what I watched. And so I don't know if that was like a pre-release thing or if I somehow missed it, because I did have to watch it. Like I watched it on my computer and then I had to go. So I was watching it on my phone and then I was watching it on another computer and then I was watching it on my phone again. So I'm almost wondering if somewhere in there I skipped some segment of stuff. But
it was the first trailer. Literally trailer 1 was Witcher 4.
Crazy, because I think trailer 1 on mine, I'm really trying to remember what it was. It wasn't The Witcher 4 though. I think it was one of the Japanese games.
I don't know.
I really don't remember. Dude. So it's fine. I've watched the Witcher 4 trailer afterwards, but this is the thing. I watched the official 4K live stream from the Game Awards channel. I don't know what happened, but clearly, so what I'm getting at is I did not see the Harrison Ford part.
Interesting.
Wait, hold on. When did it happen? Because I'm going to throw something out there.
It was when Todd Howard and them did their whole conversation.
I did not see that. The only thing I saw with Todd Howard was when he came up for the Fallout adaptation.
Oh, really? Yeah, dude, I don't know what the fuck you watched.
Well, there's two spots to note. I am going to go ahead and get it out there. I'm just going to throw this out there. I have long said I fucking hated when the Game Awards had music and bullshit from other stuff. And I know it was music from Arcane. I like Arcane. I didn't give a shit. I did not watch that. I skipped that. I thought I did a pretty good job of hitting the left keypad or the right keypad where it moves forward in 10-second increments until I saw that it was done. I don't know how I could have missed it. It is possible that somehow I skipped too far. And then I skipped again when they did that fucking ridiculous, stupid Snoop Dogg shit, which I, again, did not give a fucking shit about. And just, and I hate beyond hate when that shit happens. And now here, I want to say, I'm not trying to be your curmudgeon. I understand that as I'm getting older and games are getting more popular, my own habits within gaming are changing and what I want to see from games changing. But the industry changing to become more popular means that more pop culture references are going to come into it. And I don't give a shit about pop culture references. I don't give a shit about Snoop Dogg being in Fortnite. I've never played Fortnite in my life. I don't give a shit about Snoop Dogg being in Call of Duty. I never played Call of Duty. And realistically, I haven't played Call of Duty in for fucking ever. So a lot of what, I'll go ahead and get that out of the way for me. A lot of what I felt out of this is that they kept pulling in celebrities that I don't give a shit about to talk about shit that I didn't give a shit about. Now,
how do you know you don't give a shit about? How do you know you don't give a shit about if you skip it?
To be fair, I'm talking about specifically the music performances for Arcane. Those are the only parts I legitimately skipped, was the Snoop Dogg thing. And only once he started rapping, once I knew that it was music performance, I did the do until it was finally over. And I did the same thing for the Arcane. I genuinely don't recall skipping anything else. And I think that maybe the pre-show that some of these games were shown in was not in the stream that I watched. I don't know why it wouldn't be. The only other part that I can say I skipped was in the stream that I watched. It was like 5 hours or whatever, but there was literally a chapter thing called Countdown. I was like, I don't need the countdown, so I skipped that.
That's why you didn't. I'm not trying to argue with you. It doesn't matter to me. But I'm looking up. I looked at the Game Awards official one, and it has the pre-show, and Witcher 4 is here. So I think you just watched a different cut-up version, and it's 3 hours and 42 minutes. It's the whole show that I watched. So
yeah, weird. I don't know how that happened, but that's fine. So what happened was the Harrison Ford thing, just them playing off of Indiana Jones.
Yeah, it was just an Indiana Jones thing, but it was one of those.
I don't mind that. That's topical to what's happening.
Yeah, it was nice, but it was just, you could tell, like, I don't know. It was one of those things where it's like, kind of, I'm not trying to be political, but you know when Joe Biden speaks, and you're like, he shouldn't be out there talking. Like, that's kind of how I felt about Harrison Ford, which apparently maybe I'm the crazy one because he still seems to be a good actor, but
yeah, he's pretty.
It seems like they just pushed him out and he didn't give a shit at all. But he was like, "Yeah, I'm indie. I love this role." So, but it was a cool moment.
I'm gonna find it again because I know whenever I first started looking, I almost clicked on one that was like the American Sign Language version, and I was like, "Oh, I don't need that." So I'm clicking on the one that I watched again out of curiosity. And because what I'm thinking might have happened, and I just didn't realize it, is that Yeah, this is a different one. I'm not sure what happened then, because the one that I watched quite literally had a section in the chapters called Countdown. And I was like, I don't need that. So I skipped to where it said main show. But now the same video is shorter than the one that I started to watch. And the first chapter is called Opening Act. I did not watch Opening Act. That's me.
Yeah.
I don't know how that happened, but that's clearly what happened.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I thought the show was pretty good. Like, I enjoyed watching it. So.
Yes, well, that sucks. I mean, it's unfortunate that I can't accurately comment on that part of the show. Thankfully, I saw The Witcher 4 elsewhere beforehand, so it didn't really matter.
So let's just go straight into the games.
Ring.
It's not necessarily worth talking about the show at that point, because it was fine. It was a game. It was an award show.
Sure.
We'll talk about the one.
I mean, I generally still
mattered.
think they're too long, but I actually do agree that even though I normally think they're too long, this one didn't feel egregious outside of the musical performances. But that's just because I don't.
Let's just future-proof next year. Spend the 5 minutes and watch it, because let's not risk skipping something.
Well, next year I'm clearly going to attempt to be watching it live instead of doing it after the fact.
Doesn't matter.
Oh, I know, but it's just funny to me because I did think. It's weird going back to watching it when they kept pulling the really pretty brunette girl back on. I was like, man, I feel like she was in so much more of last year's show, and I've seen her only for 3 times in the bit that I watched.
She's got like a whole hour before the show. That's where
clearly,
the Pac-Man game was announced and all that shit. But then at that point, let's just go through the
games.
Through the list of them, because there's some good shit. That's if he can keep up this level of announcements, then the Game Awards will be super successful. I hope that this show kind of has people be like, you know what, this is something that we should be rallying around, and it becomes something akin to E3, because it's very clear that that's the draw. I'm sorry, but I'm not going there to see who won fucking Streamer of the Year. Some dude I've seen, but like only because I'm too into young children's pop culture at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and see, I guess that's kind of what I mean. Like, right, to actually step back on terms of how the show went, what I'm really getting at there is like, whenever I think about the way the show is structured and what they're focusing on pulling in, I don't blame Jeff. I don't even think he's doing the wrong thing. I think my interest in that particular element of gaming, since gaming has gotten so pop culture focused because it's gotten so big and so popular, and the majority of gaming is around these games that never end, that you're supposed to play forever, and Snoop Dogg's over here talking about how when you wanted to play more game, you had to chill to the next episode and all these things. I was like, okay, fine, that's cool, whatever. But it's like I'm reflecting on the fact that like I'm not aging out. What's really happening is that the industry is getting more and more popular. And so the things that I found interesting about gaming at one point are starting to kind of play a backseat to games being more focused towards the broadest possible audience that they can get and the market in which that's going to happen. And the only other thing I really want to mention here that I haven't heard a whole lot of people talk about, but I've also not just been all over the internet and I haven't talked to a whole lot of friends about, but I thought it was really interesting that this is all based on how you perceive what the Game Awards had from an announcement standpoint and how you feel about that type of game. But there was a lot of play forever type games that are made because a group of people are coming together and saying, hey, we need a game on our roster that is a games as a service game so we can pull this revenue and do this and we can meet this criteria. And I thought it was really interesting that I saw a lot of games that, to me, not even necessarily as a hit against them, I saw them and I go, these feel like build game by the numbers type games. And then you have that Game of the Year award speech from the guy from Larian, who is basically saying like, you can take his speech in a lot of ways. It was uplifting in a lot of ways and saying like, hey, the games that are going to get to this level to where you're arguing over which one's the best is from people who cared. But then you could also kind of view it as a little bit of a scathing indictment of what the majority of the industry feels like it's doing. And I thought it was a little interesting to hear him talk about games that seem like they're being made by not respecting the artist behind it, and then feeling like there was a lot of games that seem like they were coming from that type of industry push in the same awards event. So all that to say, watching these is getting a little harder for me and what I find interesting about gaming, because I am a different type of gamer, and gaming is a little more broadly painted now than it used to be. And that's not a bad thing. It's just it doesn't jive with me as well as it once did on the broader scheme. I remember when I used to watch E3, almost every game actively excited me because they spoke to the sensibilities I liked about gaming, and that's just not happening now. And so it is hard, I think it probably came off as a little pessimistic whenever you said, how many games will you be excited for? And I was like, fucking probably 3. And I wasn't that far off of my own guess. So yeah, we can start talking about the games at that point.
I feel like I'm going to be interested for you to watch it live next year, because I feel like this is just me listening to you. I feel like you're being very pessimistic over what amounted to 10 minutes of a 3-hour of a 4-hour show.
I don't even mean the game. I don't even mean the musical performances.
But just
I'm
a lot
actually
of the
talking
pop culture
about a
stuff.
lot.
I don't think it's as bad as you. I don't know. Like,
okay, well, let me better dissect
Borderlands
these out.
4.
Part of what I'm saying is the games that were these forever games and that you're supposed to play endlessly. A lot of what announced and a lot of what was announced and what was shown and what was getting updated on were those types of games, and those don't interest me. That's really now some of that was tied into that, but like Warframe, I even like Warframe, but I don't care enough about getting updated about it anymore. I don't care about the Hoyoverse Star Honkai Star Rail or whatever games. A lot of games shown just kind of felt like for me, someone who doesn't have enough interest in that, feeling like there was a lot of similar things shown, and there was a lot less that I was very, very excited about. And then the rest of it was just my own general take on it. I find it hard to get overtly excited about a CGI trailer.
I mean, that's a different thing. I don't know.
Yeah, that's not exclusive to the Game Awards either. I mean, that's just the nature of what it is. So yeah, let's start talking about the games and go from there. And let's go ahead and start with The Witcher 4, because I think from hearing my own things, I think you might be hearing, and I really genuinely don't want to be pessimistic. I don't even really think that that's what's happening here. I'm not downtrodden about this. I think that for a CGI trailer, this is really cool. I don't think that this game is really any kind of close, which makes it a little hard to get excited about. I think we don't see this for 2 or 3 years, and unfortunately, I didn't get to see gameplay. What are they trying to bring to the table? What does the move to Unreal Engine do for this series? What does it look like? How are they attacking some of the problems that Unreal gives to games in their games? Because people have high expectations of them. So this looks cool, but this is more of just cool. They're finally just showing a trailer to the long running, knowing that The Witcher 4 was real. So what's your take on this?
I don't know. I guess you're not wrong, but I also personally don't need to see gameplay from CD Projekt Red.
I think that's a pretty fair.
I don't. They could only show CGI trailers for Witcher 4 and release it, and I would buy it.
So let me ask you this then, but just because this is more of a curiosity, is that strictly because of the name behind the studio?
Yeah.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is because it is easier to be excited about The Witcher 4 when you know you enjoyed The Witcher 3. But let's say that this was a new IP from the CD Projekt Red, not tied to any IP. Would you still be this excited? It sounds like the answer is yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
CD Projekt Red. No matter how I feel about Cyberpunk from my own personal list, they've made 2 of the greatest video games of all time.
Sure. Yeah.
And I don't do whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah.
They could be like Rockstar, where they're like, hey, we're releasing a trailer in 2 weeks and it'll be just as hype. So
yeah.
It's too bad they made Siri fat.
I want to highlight there. But. Yeah, I was actually about to bring that up. I think Siri looks older and more worn, as you would expect. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to throw my hat in the ring. This Siri, first of all, if we're just going to go off of what's being claimed, that Siri is no longer smashable. This Siri is still smashable.
More smashable?
Yeah, I don't think it's been hit at all. I think she looks very good in this.
Here's a theory I have about it, based off of something what we were talking about at work. I think an offhanded joke I made, but I think it fits here, right?
Sure.
Siri is hot to us in the same way that I can no longer be like, oh, I'm into MILFs. Do you know what I mean? MILFs are just women. Those are people my age. Like
They're just wilfs now.
And I think, they're just like, I would smash that woman who I graduated with, of course. Like,
yeah, pretty good.
Like, and I think that's part of why, like, unless you're grifting, like, Siri kind of fits like the hot that like I like now is like an older, more mature, badass.
Well,
will carry
I was about
me
to
through
say,
the threshold of our house.
I do think that there's something to be said about the fact that as we continue to get older, even if they age her up, she's just even more age appropriate for us, arguably. Yeah. But also, I think a big part of it is that Siri's just a badass, and there's something about a woman that you kind of feel like could beat your ass a little bit that's enticing.
We were talking about this at work. Maybe this is just me, but like they're talking about like, oh, I'm a little short. Like I'm 5'10", or if I'm giving myself an inch or two, and it was one of those things where we were talking about girls, and there were these girls at work were talking about, oh, I need a taller guy. And I'm like, I need a taller girl.
Like, my guy.
They're like looking at me. They're like, really? And I'm like, yes. Like, mama, uppy. Can I have a hug? Like, are you
There's
joking?
clearly a reason that Lady D from Resident Evil 8 was like universally on the internet, because like everyone was like, wait, what?
Dog.
An 8'6" woman?
You give me like a tall.
They make them like that?
Dude, I'll fucking walk around the house wearing an apron and whistling while I'm doing the laundry. I don't give a shit.
So to come back around to The Witcher, to I guess put a little bit more of a description, I think what's cool about this is that confirming that it's Ciri is sick. I'm very happy with that. I think Ciri was the obvious call, but it's cool seeing it be confirmed. I think that it being Ciri is a lot like what we saw from The Last of Us 2, where it allows you to move from a character who's bulkier and older that we saw in like Witcher 2 and Witcher 3, and you can make a character who's a little more focused on being agile and fast, and you can change up the gameplay in that way, because that was one of the things I really enjoyed from The Last of Us 1 to The Last of Us 2, where it was like, cool, it's still the same basic type of gameplay, very much more fleshed out, but with the added component of Joel was older and more wise, but slower and more methodical, and Ellie's able to be she can be that if she needs to, but she can also be bombastic, and she can be very sly and quick, and kind of feel like you can run through a level in a way that you couldn't with Joel. That's cool to see here, and I'm excited to see that go through. Also, I think there's a lot of cool story stuff you can do with her. So I want to basically clarify that the only reason I can't call myself crazy excited about this is that the thing that would have made me crazy excited would have been gameplay. Or honestly, if this was hey, this is a cinematic trailer, but we're showing gameplay in 3 months, that'd be cool. That would get me excited. The part of it's like a twofold thing. It's that this is just a CGI trailer, which I've kind of grown numb to. It's well done. It looks good. It's cool. But I've grown numb to, because they're not very indicative of anything. And then it's the fact that it's so vague as to when we might see this. So it's those two things that keep it from being, whoa, I'm super excited, but there's a lot of great in this, even that this CGI trailer brings to the table. So I'm happy.
This is one of those trailers, which goes to what I talked about a little bit last week, where I've seen this trailer. I will never watch another one, and I will pre-order this. Like, that's just the way this will go. I may it's on Twitter and I'll see it, but like I'll never actively seek it out. Witcher 4 is coming. Cool.
Sure.
Witcher 3 is incredible.
Yeah. So out of curiosity, what is your gut feeling on when we're going to see this?
PS6. Really?
The thing that's catching me is that they did not make the switch to Unreal until about 2022. And they themselves have gone on throughout different game developers saying to be like, hey, these are some of the problems that we have to find solutions for within the way that Unreal is built.
Yeah.
And one of the big things is, like, a lot of people don't think about, one of the ways that Unreal kind of really struggles on console and PC is like traversal stutter, and moving through large sections of open world and the game having to kind of hitch behind to catch up because it's trying to compile. And they have specifically said, like, we don't want that. We are going to have to work within Unreal to make our own branch of this particular thing so that we can solve this on our side, so that we can keep the high expectation that people have for our gameplay. And I know that's a little bit of an ironic statement coming from the studio that put out a game as busted as Cyberpunk was at its worst. But I think that I think that they clearly have learned a lesson and they know they can't really afford. But since they're having to do so much work in Unreal, I think it's almost like Unreal's easier to work in than having to develop your own engine alongside it, but they're still having to develop some stuff. So all the time they're saving and not having to build their own engine, they're also gaining some of it back from having to fix problems with Unreal. And so I'm curious to see if this is can this be a 4-year game? Can this be like a 2022 to 2026 game? That'd be cool, but I don't know.
To me, the biggest thing that tells me it's a pretty long ways off is that it read on the bottom of the screen. I don't know if you noticed when it was saying what it was running on. It says unannounced RTX graphics cards.
Yeah. Yeah. And as far as I know right now, I think that the
50
RTX
series is coming,
50
but
series
it's
is already announced.
Oh,
no,
that might not be announced. Like, it leaked.
We know it's coming, but it's not announced. Yeah.
Yeah. They all leaked. Like all of them leaked today. I think it all leaked out today.
Yeah, they've been kind of getting dribbled out a little. So,
and everyone knew like the 50 series was coming. So
sure, yeah. I mean, it's anybody can. Like, eventually, the 60 series will come. They've not changed their naming structure at all.
This just felt like when you saw like at the end of the PS4 life cycle, you saw just coming to PlayStation consoles, and you're like, what does that mean? It's coming to Vita too. Yeah.
Well, I think it's vague to try and stop you from being able to spend too much time worrying about when it's going to come. And I don't think it's the wrong move. This is a traditional marketing, cycle. I see what's happening. For me, I'm just no longer excited about this part of the cycle. I'll start getting genuinely excited, and I'll probably do exactly what you did. The first time they show gameplay, I'll watch it, probably be blown away, and then be like, well, I'm getting this game, and then not give a shit if I ever watch anything else about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's it for me. All right. Of course, I don't think it's worth mentioning every game. So I think shouting out the games that kind of feel like they really reached out to you and seem cool. It's interesting seeing Ninja Gaiden come back. I thought that was cool, but not necessarily. I'm not necessarily excited. It's just more like, oh, there's a lot of like old IP that's being revisited, which that is cool. Onimusha coming back, that's cool.
Yeah. Ninja Gaiden looked like a game that I will buy, I will like and talk about on the show once, and then I'll never play it again.
It strikes me that you will be in this game, you'll be very much with how you ended up working out Prince of Persia, where you're like really excited about it. You talked about it for like an episode, and then you're just like, yeah, I never beat that game. Wasn't really for me. But it is cool. I'm glad to see that they're coming back with it and they're letting it be a cheaper. It's exactly what we've been talking about. You can let old IP that doesn't necessarily have enough pull to be AAA still exist by making them AA or just simple. Like, this is a cheap game, clearly, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does all right,
I'm sure.
So, Slay the Spire 2.
Dude.
I still yet to play Slay the Spire 1.
Okay, I just move on? That just made me mad.
I'm assuming that you're quite excited for this to come and ruin your life. Yes,
I'm extremely excited. Hopefully, I'll have Platinum Balatro by then, because I don't know if I'll play Balatro again for a while.
So I'm assuming this is one of your ultra excited games.
Yes,
and The Witcher was as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. So far, no game that we've discussed has been a super excited for me. So there is Shadow Labyrinth, which is like the weirdest take on a Pac-Man game, this is one of those games where I struggle to say whether I'm excited for it or if I'm like watching it. And to be fair, this is another one of those ones I realized I missed initially and I only saw it today. I think the idea is so interesting that I will definitely play it, but I struggle to say that I'm like excited for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I was excited strictly because I'm like, this is the most interesting thing you could have done with this that I don't know if it'll work.
Yeah.
But I'm intrigued.
Well, it's another good example of like, how do you use an IP in an interesting, new, unique way? This is a good way to do that. So that's pretty cool to see. I think this is clearly a lot further along than something like Prince of Persia doing what they did, going to a Metroidvania. But it's in that same vein of like, no IP is too sacred to just drastically change.
Yeah,
and that's cool to see. So this is one that I'd say I'm impressed with, and I think it's one of the more interesting announcements that I've seen. But I could see myself falling in love with it if it actually delivers on its thing. But I wouldn't count myself as hyper excited for it. This is a game where if you pick it up, I'll play it pretty close to launch, but otherwise I'll just find it on sale one day. And then much like with a lot of those other games, I might find myself 2 weeks later being like, holy shit, everyone's got to play this.
Yeah.
Like that's how I'm feeling about it. It could be I never touch it, or I end up playing it and it could be really good. So the next game that I kind of want to talk about here, let me scroll back up. God, there's a lot of games in here. One of the most interesting announcements, but this is another one of those things where I'm not excited for it, but it's very interesting, was Elden Ring Night Rain. Cool to see the Elden Ring IP get another entry so soon, and cool to see it not be a DLC, but instead be a standalone game that's focused on being co-op multiplayer, which, I mean, the series already is, but this is being so much more, and this pulling the lore from the Dark Souls world into the Elden Ring. This is one of those things where if I liked Elden Ring more, and if I liked co-op, like online games that are made to basically... Part of it is I need to see more of how the game's actually going to be structured. I could be excited for this if it's meant to be a one and done, which I feel like it being From Software, it is meant to be a one and done.
Yeah, Sean had sent me a thing today that was saying it's going to be 1 or 3 players.
Yeah.
No 2 players though, which is weird.
That's weird. So you either have to have like a full fire team for Destiny terms, or you're playing it completely on your own.
I'm into this. I hope it's more PvE than PvP. I don't like playing PvP in those games. It's very punishing, but
I don't think it's intended, but as we were watching it, this is one of the only things at Card Night that we did watch, because we were like, what the hell is this? And as it was on and Saul and I looked at the screen, we were like, bro, is that the Nameless King or whatever the hell it's from Dark Souls 3? I was like, holy shit, it is. I was like, in Elden Ring? So it's one of those things where like I'm excited adjacent because I do like the Dark Souls lore. I don't really know enough about the Elden Ring lore to be excited, so I'm only excited about the Dark Souls aspects of this. But depending on the type of co-op game it is, I could see this being interesting. One of the things that kind of struck me as crazy is that the original envision for Shadow of the Colossus was that it was going to be a multiplayer PS2 game where you and other people could link up and take down the Colossi as like big bosses. And they had certain ones that were designed specifically around that. And then it was determined that it was going to be too difficult. PS2 wasn't going to be able to handle it really well. So they kind of re-scoped it into a single player game. Seeing this kind of makes me think that this might be sort of playing into that idea where it's like you and a group of friends going out and taking down this big boss, and that's the majority of the game, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that could be interesting. It's not one of my excited games, but it's one of the more intriguing things to have come out. And man, it's what a way to make the Kodakawa purchase. Like, do you think Kodakawa was over here with Sony? Like, you see that shit? You see that? You see that shit right there? Yeah, our asking price just went up.
You want that Bandai Namco logo to change to PlayStation? Let's go! Let's go! Let's go!
Come on, my guy. Yeah. That's interesting all across the board. Okay, so this is another one of those games. Since we talked about Shadow of the Colossus, I'm curious to see your take on this, because from what I tell, you don't really have any of the Fumito Ueda games under your belt. So I don't think that you've built up any kind of love for them. But this falls under a very similar aspect to where this is not CGI, but it also doesn't really communicate a whole lot outside of a vibe. So it was cool to see the Untitled Project from Fumito Ueda, the little cutscene where he's like climbing up the robot before the shockwave comes and it flies off in the head. I'm like, there's vibes here, but it doesn't tell me a lot about what the game is. So this is like, I think it makes for good announcement for something like a 10th year anniversary for the Game Awards, but it makes for something that's like, there's not enough meat there to get excited or even really speculate on with friends who are like that. So it's in a weird spot. So I'm assuming this did nothing for you, because why would it? Nothing. Okay. You're muted, just so you're aware. But we get to a game that, Chris, I am very curious of your thoughts on. This is the first game that we've reached as talking that is my excited And it's because of all the games that I've played from them so far being so good. And that is Split Fiction looked sick.
It did look good. Yeah.
Also, I like Joseph Ferris. There's something about the guy and his energy
I thought it was
that
funny.
it's really hard not to just like the guy because he has just an energy. So whenever the game actually got shown, and it was funny because I was already talking to my wife about playing It Takes Two, and I was telling her about us playing A Way Out. And Brother Tale of Two Sons is not Hazelight, but it is Joseph Ferris's game.
Mm-hmm.
So he has a good track record. And I think there's no reason to not think that this will be great outside of the fact that they showed every bit of it and it looks so fun. I think what I like about his games is that he keeps leaning more and more and more into games just being gamey.
Yeah.
Like A Way Out is not necessarily that gamey, but it's still gamey enough to where you can stop and play bullshit baseball for fucking, like there's that going.
Yeah.
But it's cool seeing this kind of really lean in and be like, fuck it, we're just going to do a little bit of everything. That's cool. I like seeing that. And that was like one of the moments where I got excited because I think it's easy to get lost in games feeling a little too theatrical at times right now. And it's cool just having someone be like, hey, by the way, here's our game. It's really cool. You play as these and every level will have a bunch of mechanics. So many so that we'll even spoil a few of them right here for you because why the fuck not?
Yeah, I thought that one showed really well. It made me. It's funny you say you're going to play it with your wife because I was like, I should probably hit Brett up and we should play It Takes Two because we never did that.
Well, listen, if it falls through with her and she just can't hang with the platforming aspects of it, I'll hit you up and we can work through our divorce.
Hell yeah, I love that.
Yeah, but the question will be, so Split Fiction rests entirely on whether my wife ends up liking It Takes Two as to whether Split Fiction is a me and you game or a me and her game. Yeah, so we'll see what comes about. I did show her the trailer and she thought it looked interesting. So
okay,
it's a good start. All right, so let's talk about another game that I think would mark both of ours about. I feel like this is on both of our excited lists. We kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but The Outer Worlds 2. Dude.
First of all, when I saw this, I was like, fuck yes. But I was sitting there like, the only thing I was waiting for was to see if it was coming to PS5. I was
because you're already sold on it, right? I mean, you sold it on conceptually.
Yeah. It's like, oh, Outer Worlds 2, I've already bought it. Cool. But like, I was watching this trailer. I'm like, this looks fantastic. This looks fantastic. Are they going to do it? And then it just popped up Xbox, PS5. And I was like, oh, yeah, they're going to fucking do it immediately. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Great. Hell yeah.
I think that this is also a great trailer because I think it speaks to all the things. It's good for a show like this because it's tongue in cheek often enough, but then it also delivers by showing gameplay that's interesting.
Dude,
and finally ending. The Fallout 3 Part 2.
Yes, that was so fucking funny.
My favorite thing was that they're even playing a little bit of jokes on themselves that like early in their career, they were just the BioWare backup team. It was BioWare made the first one, you'll make the second one.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I wouldn't have been surprised if there would have been a crazy world in which Mass Effect 1 came out from BioWare and then Mass Effect 2 came out. Like, the way things had been going, I could have imagined either a Dragon Age 2 from Obsidian or a Mass Effect 2 from Obsidian, because that just would have been so fucking funny.
It's funny because in a way Mass Effect 2 is more like an Obsidian game than really a
I don't disagree. And what's funny is that that's the only Mass Effect game that I've been able to beat because it held my attention long enough to do so. To be fair, I didn't play 3. Hey, this is good news for you. I have been really debating reapproaching that series because I never beat 1 because I only played it on Xbox when it was very buggy at launch. And I just never played 3. I honestly don't know why. There was just a lot of shit coming out around the same time as 3. And that wasn't forefront of my thing, you know?
I hope you do. Yeah, they're fun games.
I started thinking about it. I was like, I have easy access to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be anytime soon. I need a break. It's like I'm probably going to be playing exclusively like less than 30-hour games for a while. But
I mean, Mass Effect 1 is only like 25, 30. You know?
Yeah. The question is this is a good time to go through it because do you think I should play Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 as back to back to back? Or do you think I should play 1, play something else? Come back to 2, play something else? Come back to 3?
I would say, I don't know. I guess that's kind of how you're feeling at the moment because I don't know if you
ride
remember.
The wave, maybe.
Yeah, because I don't know if you remember, I got Mass Effect 1 Platinum, and then I platinumed Mass Effect 2 right in a row. And I played almost all the way. I played all the way through Mass Effect 3 and got bored and stopped for a couple months. And it turned out that I was one mission from the end of the game.
Damn. Yeah.
So I needed a break. I would say for me, maybe, obviously you'd probably be going for the platinums, but if you weren't doing that, I would say just play them all in a row and just straight through. But
yeah, I feel you. Well, going back to the Outer Worlds 2, I just think that there's so much that's interesting about the way that they showed it. And I also like that they kind of poked fun at the fact that this game took a lot longer to make, so therefore we should expect more from it. Which also kind of paints me. I really wonder how quickly the Outer Worlds 1 was made, because this has ostensibly been in the work for 5 years max. And they say that this was took 3 times as long to make. So expect double the size. Are you implying that the Outer Worlds 1 took 2 years to make? It wouldn't surprise me, because Fallout New Vegas was made in 9 months or some crazy shit. I might be exaggerating a little, but I remember them being our deadline was insane. So.
Oh, there's an Outer Worlds 2 page on the PSN. Holy shit, I didn't know that until today.
Yeah.
I'm only saying that because I'm now downloading the PS5 version of the Outer Worlds.
I debated that, but that's another one of those. I have games I have yet to play. I don't need to be going back to games I've already played. But everything about this trailer looks excellent, and it looks to fix some of the few areas that I think the first game really had lulls in. And I think the first game was really easy to forgive a lot of those lulls, because it was very clearly a AA project. And I think it was looking at Private Division and seeing what they were excited for. So yeah, this is going to be cool. I'm glad to see them kind of going through all this. That's on my I'm excited for
tippy
it.
Top, dude. That was the only time. I don't want to sound like a fanboy, but the only time I audibly screamed was when I saw the PS5 logo. It was literally I'm watching this and I'm like, this looks incredible. This looks incredible. What's going to happen? Fuck yeah.
Yeah. Of course, I was watching at work with my headphone in, so I had to be a little down on it. But I just, as soon as I saw that PS5 logo, my smile got way bigger, because I was like, fuck, yes, I'm going to be playing this shit without having to play on Xbox or wait. I could just play it day one, because I've always kind of thought the game would come over. I'm glad to see that hope wasn't misplaced.
Cannot wait, dude. Looks so good.
There was a game shown that doesn't do anything for me realistically. It's just so outside. I don't know if I would say I'd never play it, but very unlikely. But I just thought it looked so weird, and not in a bad way. There's a game called Steel Hunters, where the entire time I was like, this looks like Evangelion meets Zoids.
I thought it looked like Transformers.
Well, I could see some of that, but a lot of these very beast-driven things look like the Beast machines. Here's playing through Horizon, Lego Horizon. Seeing the machines kind of played out in Lego way. It's man, I already thought this when I played the original game, but a lot of the designs from the original Horizon are very reminiscent of Zoids. And I don't know if you ever watched Zoids growing up, but I mean, what a goated series is really good.
I never did.
Yeah, it's just fucking mech animals, essentially.
Nice.
Yeah, Liger Zero, shit like that. So it was really cool, but it was interesting seeing that, because it had that feel to it. And of course it had Transformers vibes, but it just had something else going for it. Maybe Pacific Rim meets Zoids. I don't fucking know.
I see that. I was super into this. The sad thing that what got me is that I was watching it and I was like, this is probably the coolest game that could be announced here that I know is going to fail.
Yeah, that was my gut feeling, and in a little bit of a sad way, because I was like, this game is probably not going to last, even though they've shown a bunch of other live service games that don't look nearly as interesting. A good example is, I can't remember the name of it right now, it's somewhere in here, but they showed an update on that Mech Breakers game, I think is what it's called. And I don't think Mech Breakers looks bad, but I think Steel Hunters looks significantly more interesting than Mech Breakers. Mech Breakers literally just looks like you're trying to make Dollar Store Gundam, and that's not a bad thing. There's room for that, because they're not making the Gundam games themselves. Someone's got to do it. But Steel Hunters looks so much cooler, and I agree. I feel like that game's going to end up. I think it's going to end up being a victim of too many games in the space and not enough time to split between them. Therefore, the game's going to falter.
Exactly.
And I think the biggest sad part is, I'm not entirely sure how you make that game without being in that arena. because I started thinking through, like, is there a way that you can pivot this to where I'd find it interesting? And I started thinking about Titanfall 2. And Titanfall 2 just, I think, is what a lot of this would have been. And Titanfall 2 did not do well at all.
No.
And I don't know if that's strictly because of the Battlefield 1 or whatever the hell it was of it all, or if it was just truly that people have moved away from wanting that type of online game and story. Because even the online in Titanfall 2 was really fucking good. So I don't know. It's hard to think through, but
yeah, I don't know. It seemed one of those things that looks really cool, but yeah, like we said, it's not going to beat Fortnite. It's not going to be. I could see it having like a small audience, but if they're not prepared for like a tight knit community, and they're like, "Oh, this is going to be the next big thing," it's not going to hit. But if they're like, "Hey, we can survive with 20,000 players," great. I'm happy
go for it. Yeah,
I'll play.
Well, and that gets so complicated because you see a lot of these games coming out now. That looks like it's probably self-published. That might be a help, or at least published from someone who doesn't have crazy expectations. Because as you may have seen, we didn't talk about the news, but they're already shuttering Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League, which I think everyone knew was coming. And a lot of games that are kind of like that are seeing end of service updates. What was that game that you were playing that you considered to be very Call of Duty like? X-Defiant, isn't it going out too? Yeah. And so my point being is that even a lot of these games that, like Suicide Squad makes sense. WB had truly unreal expectations for that game. But I think X-Defiant had reasonable expectations and still couldn't make it. Which I think leads you to believe it's like, go ahead.
X-Defiant called themselves a Call of Duty killer. Like that was the dumbest thing they could have done.
It goes back to the industry of you should never call yourself a franchise killer. You should never call yourself the Halo killer, the Call of Duty killer, because every time you do, you set the stupidest expectations on your game.
Exactly. It's just no reason to do it. But apparently the Steel Hunters beta is out, so I'll probably download that on computer and see.
You know what? It looks interesting enough that I'd be willing to play it. That's like, excited adjacent.
Exactly. Interested.
Now I want to tell you, we're going to a game that I couldn't care less about, but I am curious to see if this does anything for you because I don't ever hear you talking about this franchise. And I know that we've kind of bounced around trying to play it's like sub game spinoffs. Borderlands 4 do shit for you?
No, I don't give a shit anymore.
Me either.
It's sad because I kind of want to care, but I don't.
I feel like I should care because Borderlands is just... Okay, I feel like I should care because I do appreciate that Borderlands is what I often say I like, which is Borderlands is a gamey as fuck game.
Yeah.
I just don't happen to really jive with its particular blend of gamey game.
I just think I'm too old for Borderlands. Like, and that's okay. And it's okay if you're still playing it. It's just, if I load up that game and there's like a fucking Haley Welch joke, I might hang myself with my PS5 outlet cord. Like, can't put myself through that.
I think a lot of it is it's really hard for me to play a defined game in that clearly wants you to be co-op. I can't see myself playing these games single player. And the issue with that is that I also don't love having to try and hyper schedule playing this game in a co-op manner. And that's why I like playing co-op games that are more loosely structured so you can just hop in and kind of do stuff without it mattering. So like a good example of a game like, and no wrong, I love the game, it was great and it had more of my interest, but like we had to go out of our way to plan play sessions for 40K Space Marine 2.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a significantly shorter game than I imagine Borderlands 2 will be, or Borderlands 4 will be rather. And so what I'm saying is like, it was already kind of difficult to want to play Space Marine, but feel like I can't because if I do, I'm no longer in sync with y'all. And that sucked. Like that, I don't want that. Right. So I would feel like often I'd want to play Borderlands if it even got to a point where I was excited about playing it. And then I'd feel bad because I'm like, I can't really play it because I'll lose where I'm at with this person. And I am not in a good enough spot. Like my priorities in my place in life with a wife, kid, and all those things is that I don't have time to just come home every day and be like, hey, I'm hopping on to 2 hours of Borderlands 4, 3 hours, whatever it be. That's hard. I can't do that every night. And so I'd be holding other people back. And I know this because it happened with Borderlands 3. And I had less responsibilities then.
Yeah. And that's funny because like I had the opposite experience of you where me and my friends all bought Borderlands 3 together. I went to work and they were level 20 and I was level 5 and I never played it again.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's
so it
can be
like,
how it happens. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know.
There's a few things in here. There's like big announcements that I want to note, like Virtua Fighter coming back around and coming from RGG Studios. Crazy. They are just doing so much. But I don't care about Virtua Fighter at all. So it's like, I don't want to say, I'm not like downing the game. I just don't have anything to say on it because I don't play fighting games like that. So,
right.
Now here's same problem, but a little more enthusiasm because this has been a long dormant series. I'm excited adjacent despite the CGI trailer for Turok Origins because there's
gameplay in that trailer.
Killer. Was there?
The last half of the trailer is gameplay.
Why would you not do that? See, that's what I'm about to say. I know that the beginning part of it, I remember seeing them walk off. Hold on, it's 1 minute and 2 seconds. Let me see. Oh, you're right. It did show a little gameplay of them like shooting the dinosaurs. Yeah, you're right. You're right. So either way, more reason to be excited. Okay. Yeah, it's like the last 12 seconds is gameplay. It's enough. I'll give it credit.
It's gameplay.
It's gameplay. But no, it looks like it could be interesting. My curiosity is, what is this? Is this like an actual individual game? I have a feeling that this might be a games as a service game. That's the thing that's like throwing me off. With who's making it, Saber is really known for multiplayer experiences like their DayZ. I would love to be wrong. I would love for it to be a game that you can play co-op or single player, because I'd love to play that. The last Turok game was the Turok from Epic, and I think Cliff Bleszinski might have been involved. But at the very least, it used Unreal Engine, and that game was really cool.
Embark on a high-stakes adventure, solo or with friends, to unravel the mysteries that hold the key to saving humanity.
Let's go. So, all right, good. That's all I need. See, this is where I need to go through and look at all the pages and their descriptions afterwards. Mm-hmm. Which I really want to ask, though. I guess, is that bad is that bad marketing to... Why can't I figure that out just from watching it? Why can you not put that in some way, somehow? Can you voice over that? Can you, would that ruin the pacing of the advertisement? Because I would have really liked to have just gotten to watch the advertisement and not have to go look at a PlayStation Network page to get the fact that it's going to be single player or co-op. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, yes, but I think that definitely slows down the show and the trailer. Like, could you imagine if at the end of that Witcher 4 cinematic, it was like single player?
Well, that feels a little more pointless, but I get where you're coming from.
Even at the end of that Turok trailer, if it was like 3-player co-op, I'd be like, like thanks, but you kind of...
Well, what if during the part in that 12 seconds of gameplay, there was just a voiceover of someone being like, play by yourself or join up to 2 friends in order to unlock the mysteries. You could have done the same thing. You know what I'm saying? Like,
because Brett, it's not the 90s. We don't make trailers that way anymore. In a world where dinosaurs have landed on Earth.
Realistically, why not? Is that not... This is what I mean. That would make me actually want to seek the game out and immediately go look for more. Instead, what this kind of made me do is go, oh, I got to wait until they show more of it because I'm not thinking of going to a page. And that's my fault. I get that. I get that I should be able to go to the PlayStation Store page. But if I'm thinking about what the job of advertisement should be, I feel like it failed me. That doesn't mean it failed everybody else. And that's the hard thing about advertising. How do you catch the biggest group of people that you're trying to catch?
Right.
You know?
It's an announcement trailer, yeah. They don't usually spoil movies until the final trailer, so it's the same thing here. They don't need to give it time,
Kevin.
Gameplay.
It'll fill in. Yeah. No, that looks really good though. I think it's cool to see. Again, I thought one of the coolest things about this being the 10th anniversary of games, of Game Awards, is that so many games that have just been absent in the industry suddenly came back out of the blue. And that's cool shit. Because if you're going to have an awards show where you say it's about the love of video games, pulling old IP out of your ass and being able to show something for them is cool. I know he didn't make these games happen, but damn cool that he was able to kind of throw all this together and be like, all this old IP that you've been loving? Guess what? Onimusha, back. Guess what? Okami, back. Guess what? It's cool to see that kind of thought process going through,
Yeah, absolutely true.
So spinning over to an RGG game that you might have interest in, what are you feeling about Project Century here? I wish they'd have shown a little bit more for me to get a better grip on it, but it seems like they're doing their thing where there's probably not another Judgment game for a while, and that was their beat 'em up take on the Yakuza style. But now that Yakuza is still going turn based as it is, do you think this is kind of feeling that, hey, this is going to be our beat 'em up game this time around?
Yeah, that's probably the role it's going to fill. I thought this was awesome. I'm definitely going to play this, but I don't have a ton to say about it. It was one of those. It's hard for me. Like, I'm excited about this. This was on my list of games I was excited for. But at the same time, it's hard for me to be excited when you announce a game with project in your title. I fucking hate that.
I was about to say that it having a name like that kind of already tells you that this is a ways down the road.
The thing that I don't understand is, like, you can change the fucking name. So give it a real name so you don't look like an asshole.
But I don't know. I guess part of me likes that they're going ahead and just being upfront with it and going, listen, where it's at in development is that we don't even have a full name for it. So understand that while you're watching the trailer. Like, this goes back to what I'm saying. Like, in a way, calling it Project Century is actually good marketing for the fact that it goes ahead and tells me that I can be excited if I have a love for RGG Studios or that particular time period or the way they handle hand-to-hand combat, whatever it be. You can be excited about that while knowing that excitement should be tempered because you're not really going to see this play out for probably 2 years. You know what I mean? And I'm actually being pretty generous because RGG have really surprisingly great turnaround times. I wouldn't actually be surprised if this game is out in 2026, which is pretty good. From from showing the game with a project name, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, think about Stellar Blade, and think about whenever it was actually just called Project Eve or whatever.
See, and maybe that makes me a hypocrite, but that was a better name because it was a robot named Eve. It fits.
True. I actually think the game should have just still been called Project Eve.
Project Eve. That's a better name. Yeah, absolutely.
But you know, like, you always had that thought of, like, that's probably not the name because anything with project in it is kind of understood to be placeholder.
That was like with Forspoken. Like, I don't believe that game was ever coming out. Like, I refused until because Project Athia, and it looked fake. Like, that wasn't a real game. It was Deep Down, and Deep Down wasn't even called Project.
Yeah, you're right. Deep Down had a legit name and still never came about.
Like, god damn, wild.
Where do you think Capcom keeps it?
Thing? Deep Down, probably in a darkest dungeon somewhere, or in the dogma of a dragon.
This one is a little. Because this is always going to happen. So it's cool seeing the trailer here, but this is more just like hey, this is something that's already happening. Omens of Tyranny was a really cool Helldivers trailer. It actually does kind of give me a little bit of a push to be like, it might be worth jumping into Helldivers because there's a lot changed now. So going back with vehicles and the new, monsters and everything might be enough to pull me back in for a good, number of hours. So I am excited about that, but I'm not counting it towards my list because, I mean, it was already out. I don't know how to describe that. Like, it's not really tied to the Game Awards in any real way.
Right. It was just there. Yeah. So and to that end, I think the Warframe 1999 thing, I've already gave my piece on those types of games. I think Warframe's a cool IP. I really like Dark Sector, which is like a IP adjacent to it that they do a lot of callbacks for, and they're doing even more here. I'm pretty sure they were trying to hint the same virus that leads to the original changing in Dark Sector is happening in here. I would love to be proven wrong, but it's interesting all the same. But I don't, much like you with Destiny, I don't have the time to play Warframe the way that it wants you to play it. And so I can't get excited for it. Yeah, I understand you completely.
What I can get excited for is a game they showed, I think it was earlier this year. It might have been last Game Awards. The first Berserker Kazan looks fucking sick. It looks really cool. And the only reason that this one gets a pass for the CG trailer is because the first time they showed this game, it was with gameplay. I don't know if you remember that or not.
I do not.
And the only time I'll say, first Berserker Kazan reveal. And this was originally... So that's the official release date trailer. Of course, recency bias is making this a little harder to go through. First revealed in December 2023. So this was last Game Awards. And it showed like a little arena fight segment with a gameplay that looked really cool. And so seeing it this way was just like, oh, cool. You can do the CG trailer once I already know what to expect. Now you're just building on the lore, and that's cool to see.
Yeah.
So that looks really cool. But, you know, if you don't remember seeing the gameplay, I could imagine someone being both really excited because it's a cool CG trailer, or just being like, oh, I didn't get anything out of this. Go look. There is better ways to see this game. I don't know much about the world this is apparently a part of. Jeff kept referencing, and there was like another anime game that looked drastically different that was set in the same world.
The funniest fucking transition where it went from like, this bloody hardcore game, and then they're like, in the same universe is this, and it's like this like cutesy anime. I was like, what are we doing here, guys? What is this,
man? And I'm gonna go ahead and use this as a way to just address all of those games. I really have lamented the fact that a lot of Japanese games lately, that almost seems too unfair. There's at least a large enough swath of Japanese games lately that all look the same. And I mean that when they come on, I'm like, is this Genshin? Like the entire time I'm like, is this Genshin? Yeah. And that's been a problem across the board. And I know some people will love these, and I'm sure if you really are super into them, you can spot the differences a little easier. But I like to call them, not all of them are Unreal Engine, but I like to call it the Unreal Engine anime game. They all look the exact same. Hoyoverse looks exact, or the Honkai Star Rail, whatever, looks the exact same as Genshin, which looks the exact same as the other game, Zenless Zone Zero, which looks the exact same as that game they showed that I can't even remember. And that's the problem. I can't remember the names of these because even the ones they showed during Summer Game Fest, I can't remember the name because they all look the same. So my brain goes Genshin. And so if you ask me what that game was, I'd go Genshin because I can't, my brain has nothing else to attach it to. So I don't love that. I was really relieved when Stellar Blade did not look like that as a Japanese game, because I was like, it very easily could have. And I'm just tired of seeing games look like that. I'm really curious if the next Persona game is going to look like that, because I can imagine it doing so. And I don't think it's the right call. My biggest benefit around that is that Metaphor doesn't thankfully look like that. It has some of the same aspects of like the thick outer, I don't know if I want to say that, but
the shading.
The shading kind of looks similar. But outside of that, the game's got a pretty interesting art style. So I'm hoping more games lean towards differentiating themselves. Because even to a lesser degree, it's kind of there in Infinity, Nikki, which is yet another game that gameplay-wise and what it's trying to do and be a forever game, I have zero fucking interest in. I just don't care. But I feel like it's at least trying to break out of that mold a little bit. Just a little bit.
Tad, yeah. I did download Infinity, Nikki. I don't know why. I downloaded it.
I mean, this might be unfair, and I'll throw that out there, but when I have not enough time and I have to make quick decisions about what I'm going to play, if a game is free to play, I already know it's not for me. Like that sounds really mean, and probably there's a few games that I'm missing out on that I might enjoy for enough hours to make it worth it. But my general rule of thumb is that if your game's free to play, you are monetized and designed in such a way that you are meant to be played for a longer period of time than I want to give you, and therefore I don't even want to start.
Fair enough. Respect that.
So, next thing up was Onimusha Way of the Sword, which I do think looks cool, but it's been so long since I played Onimusha on PS2 that I don't really have a built-in love for the series. So as much as this looked cool, I also don't know how to feel about it. I'm excited to see more.
Fair enough.
But I'm not excited for it, if that makes sense.
I feel the same about it.
There we go. Dungeon Fighter Arad, which is Unreal anime game. Here we are. This is the one I'm real curious to see, because I am torn between thinking it looks like it could be really interesting, but also that ultimately maybe Crimson Desert is just the same thing, but more original. How did you feel about the Game of Thrones reveal?
That's a mobile game, dude. I don't care at all.
The only thing that got me somewhat surprised around the whole mobile game aspect thing is that a lot of those games that are being touted as mobile games, I thought was interesting because you can play them on computer now, which is interesting because you can essentially play them in a more traditional gameplay style. So that brings me to the other game that I was thinking about. And like I said, I'm going to scroll up for a little bit to find it. But the Crimson Desert update looks pretty cool because there is a game from them, and I'm Black Desert Online, I think is what it is. And the gameplay is kind of cool in it, but it's an MMO, and I just don't have the time to sink into it. And so I'm like, it'd be great to have this type of gameplay combat in a game that's just designed to be an RPG, and that's what Crimson Desert looks like it's supposed to be. So I'm like cautiously excited for Crimson Desert, and it looks like it's taking some inspiration from like a Game of Thrones style take on fantasy.
Yeah, Crimson Desert looks cool. It's always looked pretty neat, so I'll definitely try it.
The game, I'm really curious. You were super excited for Dying Light 2, and then it kind of just came and went for you.
Yeah.
What is the Beast doing for you?
I'm less excited than I would have been had I liked Dying Light more, but I'm intrigued by it strictly because it's supposed to be something more akin to like a Miles Morales stylized game. And if that's the case,
that's
then
what I kind
I'm
of
into
thought.
it. Yeah.
And it even makes sense that they're leaning more into like a gameplay trick for this one because it's meant to be a shorter burst gameplay thing. So I think it's a good idea, but I have no built-in love for Dying Light because I've never played any of them. So
which is fair.
Yeah, it's not like I actually think this looks pretty good, but I'm not excited for it. But it did enough to make me go, if Chris has access to Dying Light 2 or 1, maybe I should just download one of them and try them one day whenever I'm bored to see what the hell the series is like.
Genuinely, if you ever want to play Dying Light 1, I'm only missing co-op trophies. Like I'll play
is Dying Light 2 also fully co-op?
Yeah, but I don't want to play Dying Light 2, so I will play Dying Light 1 with you, but I will.
Yeah, I got you. Okay, well, yeah, if that time ever comes, I'll holler at you.
Hell yeah.
All right, I see no reason to talk about The Last of Us 2 remastered on PC. Squid Games Unleashed, I also just don't have anything to say about. I'm going to quickly run through this one, and I'm going to say that I was excited when they showed Milestone as the developer behind Screamer, and I think that the trailer for Screamer does look interesting, but it runs into the same problem of it being a 2026 game first and foremost, and no gameplay. And so all the excitement to seeing Milestone, which is like, I know that you don't know this, Chris. They're the people that made the Hot Wheels Unleashed games. They make a lot of racing games, and most of their racing games are pretty good. So they're like one of those baked in. If I see their name behind something, it's probably a racing game that I'll enjoy enough to want to pick up and play. So I was like, cool, Milestone. And then it was like, really cool trailer, no gameplay, 2026. And I was like, okay, it's something I want to note because I think it could be interesting, but right now it's too hard to be excited about because there's just not enough to go off of.
That was the one that I was like, I feel like this is a Brett game because it reminded me of Split Second for some reason.
Hell, dude, Split Second's so fucking cool too. Yeah. PS3 has some banging racers, dude.
It did. But seeing
Blur?
this, no, I never played it, but I know of it, yeah.
Yeah, Blur's pretty cool too.
I thought Screamer's cool. It has the nice anime like vibe to it.
Yeah,
So.
I'm curious to see if that's going to hold or if that's one of those things that will end up changing throughout from here to release. But for now, I have some optimism.
Yeah, I do too. I'll play it.
No interest in Wuthering Waves. Stage Fright is another one of those things where I don't have enough information to be excited about. I liked Overcooked. Yeah. Overcooked is also slightly responsible for my wife being a little afraid to play Lego Horizons with me. Because when we tried playing Overcooked together, I did not do a good job of keeping my cool, which is funny because the trailer kind of pokes fun at that being a game that makes people mad. But let's go to the game that I think is one of your big full-on, you already knew you were excited for. How are you feeling about all the crazy gameplay that they showed for Mafia, Old Country?
It looked good. I didn't pay too much attention to it because I was kind of already in. But I thought it looked great. Like I'll definitely play this game. I like the old school vibe, and it comes at a perfect time for me. Season 2 of The Sopranos, baby. Like it's.
See, Mafia is another one of those franchises that I know a lot of people who've played, but I've never played any of them. And I've had access to them. I think I would too. I really think I'd like most of Mafia 1 for sure, because it's not even trying to be a sandbox in any capacity. It's just a story. Part of what's always held me back about wanting to play Mafia 2 and even Mafia 3 is that they kind of seems to market themselves to some degree of being like Grand Theft Auto style sandboxes, and I don't actually think they're that hardcore into the sandbox element. They're just, it can be a sandbox, but it came at a time where that kind of, definitely Mafia 3, that wasn't a strong interest for me, and it was like almost a deterrent for a game. So parts of Mafia 3 looked really good, but part of me wanted to be like, I don't really want to have to suffer through a bunch of open world traversal back and forth, and that kind of worried me. And I've always kind of been on that edge of like, maybe I should return to Mafia and Mafia 3 and maybe Mafia 2. So yeah,
I would definitely recommend you play at least 3. 3 is my favorite of them. I think Mafia 1 and 2 seem closer to what you'd honestly, if you told me you were playing Mafia 1 and 2 right now, I'd be like, that fits. They're very like story driven. There's combat, but like Mafia 1 is open world, but not really. Mafia 2 is open world, but there's literally nothing to do in it.
Yeah, it came out at that time where you just had to be an open world game if you were that kind of game.
It's like you go collect Playboy magazines out there, and that's it. And then I think Mafia 1 Remake has a skip drive feature. I think I might be lying to you, but I honestly, thinking about it, you should probably play Mafia 1 next. I think that fits like what you're looking for. It's like a 20-hour game unless you go for a platinum. So sure,
yeah, that's not bad. It's pretty good. I think this looks interesting, and Red Dead 2, and I know this isn't Rockstar, but I'm getting somewhere with it. Red Dead 2 being a game that I was at least able to see all the way through to the end, despite not necessarily being as in love with the open world aspects as everyone else was. I would occasionally feel the mundanity and kind of like stressed about having to open world travel to the next location just so I could finally see the story continue on like that. I hate when that happens for me in those types of games, because the open worlds themselves lose their luster for me really quickly, because I don't have enough time for me to want to waste in those aspects. And I don't have the same built-in, like, oh, Rockstar makes perfect open worlds that some people have. I think there are plenty of, I've often said that Red Dead 2's open world feels magical until you see all of the random events once through and you start seeing them a second time. The moment you see a random event happen a second time, the magic of the first one is gone. I thought it was so cool seeing the guy come out and be like, unhandcuff me, man. And then being like, well, what do I want to do? After like the 7th time of that happening, I was like, I'm not stopping and talking to you. Go fuck yourself. and that's, I hate that I get that way with those games. I wish, like, I'm not saying they should be made that way. We talked about accessibility. I know that's not the way that they want to make that game. But man, basically, if I could pay someone to just play all the parts of Red Dead that I don't want to do, all the open world travel, and then just hand me the controller and get my attention when it's story time, I'd be pretty down for that. That sounds like a good time. Red Dead 2 cut into like a director's cut edition where it's strictly mission by mission by mission would be like my ideal game.
Well, I'm sure you can find that.
Maybe one day. All right, a couple more things that I think we're at the this is another one of those excited but not, because it's CG and there's nothing to go off of. Sonic Racing was really good. Sonic Racing Crossworlds therefore has my attention as I like the last one, and Sonic Racing All-Stars Transformed was fantastic. I want to see what's coming, but it's hard to be excited for coming soon, which is very vague. But it's coming soon, yet you refuse to show me gameplay. So
you think a car is going to go around a track?
Yeah, but you can show me how the mechanics have changed between 1 and 2.
Can you explain to me one thing? Because I don't give a shit about this game. I'm never going to play it. Why does Sonic drive? Why do any of them drive?
Oh, yeah. No. Longest running thing, and I'm so glad that Sonic 3 has got the joke of him being on a motorcycle, because like the Shadow the Hedgehog PS2 game has him on a motorcycle, and the immediate thought is, Why the fuck would you? Why would you be on a motorcycle? You're faster than a motorcycle.
Right. Like, why are they?
The answer is the drip.
The drip. That's the answer.
That's the answer. When you run as fast as they can, no one can see your drip. But if you make a car that's styled towards what your theme is, people can see your drip.
Yeah, sure. But they're racing. And they're all faster than the cars that they're racing in.
Sure. Yeah. But now it's about showing the drip in a competitive nature to where you can mess someone else's drip up with well-placed attacks and boost. And it's easier to show off when the people can register the speed at which you're moving.
Hold on.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is a racing game, right?
Sure.
Which implies a podium.
Yeah.
Which is clearly the better spot to show off your drip as a hedgehog.
I mean, true as well. And also Shadow does that because have you seen my boy Shadow? You seen them boots? You seen them gloves?
I mean, Idris Elba's killing it.
My man,
that's Keanu Reeves.
It's Keanu Reeves in the movies. But no, Shadow design wise has got drip that Sonic wishes he could have.
I mean, Shadow's a badass. You'll never catch me dissing the Shadow Hog.
Yeah.
I just don't understand why hedgehogs get into cars. I've never seen the Flash in a car.
You know what it is? I have it figured out. Amy is not super fast.
Mm-hmm.
Big the Cat's not super fast. The crocodile from the other team is not super fast. The lizard. I think what it is that Sonic and Shadow want to be able to compete in a somewhat fair ground with all these people who are not ultimate life forms such as themselves.
Yeah, but that has to be agonizing.
They lower themselves. Yeah, do you think that it's like the Flash where it's like painfully awkward for him to move at normal speed so that other people can like perceive him?
Right.
Yeah.
It has to be. So, like, what does that feel like for them? They're choosing to potentially lose here, first of all, when they could always win.
Sure.
Which, maybe there's no challenge in that. But it's got to be agonizing for them to be like 3 laps around this fucking thing.
That's 40 years.
Right. Oh my God, that's going to take forever. And then, realistically, they're so fast that they don't ever really need to drive the car.
Yeah.
Right? Because Sonic can just hit the pedal and then run away, go have a taco, and then come back and then turn the car, then run away, come back, turn the car. Like, he doesn't need to. This is a concept that just doesn't make any sense to me. But yeah, I'm glad that you're happy as a Sonic fan.
Yeah, and listen, I'm with you, but this goes to the same thing of when you go to like, why the fuck is Mario getting into a go-kart and racing against this dude who keeps stealing his bitch away?
Well, that's because Mario's a cuck.
Honestly, case closed. Yeah, yeah, you got to figure it out.
What else?
No more discussion needed.
Are we serious? Okay, the answer's clear.
Your princess is in another castle. Oh yeah.
She didn't tell me. Mamma mia! I'm going to miss the show.
Yeah, the only other really big things are like the Okami sequel, which is kind of in the similar thing where the excitement there almost all comes from the fact that Hideki Kamiya is coming back as director, which is cool, but there's not much shown to be able to really judge. So it's all based off of your excitement for a classic beloved IP coming back around.
Can I just say that I don't mean to be disrespectful to anybody, but this did not, to me as a person, did not warrant the
Jeff's
introduction.
Action. Like Jeff almost cried. Good for him.
That I can forgive because like if I was announcing like Fallout 5, I might cry.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. So like
Genuinely.
We're saying like Jeff really likes Okami 1.
Right.
So he's
and
like like, bro. Yeah. So you're saying like the drums and like we're gonna make a big deal before we start to reveal it?
You're pretending it's your closer.
That's how you took that?
That's how they set it up until they didn't.
Until they didn't.
Until they one more thing does. That was the closer. And I'm like,
that's fair.
This is almost as bad as when they announced a Kickstarter at the Sony show.
Yeah, that's pretty rough. Yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm looking forward to see what they do with an Okami sequel, but the games industry has come considerably far from there. So part of me likes the idea of it being truly just how do we build on the idea of what the original Okami was, without necessarily trying to completely change it, or just literally being like more Okami.
Yeah,
like sometimes the best thing to do is just, there haven't been a lot of games like Okami since Okami. Maybe the best thing to do is just more Okami from someone who understands it. Yeah, I don't know.
But like, I don't know. This just felt like it was announcing nothing. Like,
yeah, it's going to be interesting seeing you finally play Okami, because it's like I'm saying, I wonder how that game feels as someone who has no context around it and they're playing it fresh.
Yeah.
But
I can already tell you that my first impression was, holy fuck, this is taking forever to start.
Oh, it's a slow start.
Yeah.
I do think it's a great game, but I think it was a great game in 2003 or 4, whenever the fuck it came out. 2005, maybe? I can't remember. Maybe that was when the Wii port came out.
I'm pretty good at getting past that, but
yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah, it is what it is. All right, couple more games. Literally, we already kind of mentioned it a little bit. Dispatch.
I have nothing to say about Dispatch, dude.
Part of me wants to be excited about it, and then part of me looked at it and it's like, the way they chose to implement the UI in this looks really dated. But if they can do something truly interesting with the story, it might be worth it. I think the cast is good. Part of me, like I said, part of me wants to play it just to see what the people behind Telltale's kind of formative years do with free from the expectation of a Telltale game. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they get to ride the wave while still being like, this is a new studio. This is a new idea. We can do different things here. What do they do with gameplay? Is this more Day of the Tentacle? Is this more Grim Fandango, something like that? Or is this still more like a Walking Dead? What have they learned gameplay-wise? Are they just sticking to trying to tell a story and being done with it? You know, it's hard to figure out. I would like to see something a little more involved. Like, a good example of what I think a really cool kind of evolution on the Telltale style of game that I think went way beyond and made gameplay king to a degree too. Did you play 12 Minutes?
Yeah.
I thought 12 Minutes felt like the perfect evolution of a Telltale game, where you think about what you say and what you do, but then there's a lot of gameplay thought processes that go through. How are you changing the loop? What are you doing? It's very puzzle oriented focused, and it's quick iteration. And I thought, man, what a cool idea. And I know that they can't do that without the 12-minute loop stick that 12 Minutes had, but it still makes you wonder, like, there's more to what you can do with gameplay in a experience that's still primarily driven at trying to give you a narrative.
Right.
All right. So here we are, the big bad. You were right. I was 6 months off. We did get Naughty Dog's new IP announcement. And unfortunately, this falls under the same, let me go ahead and throw it out there for everyone. I can't be super excited for this because there's not enough to go off of. What I can tell you that is exciting about it is that, at the very least, that little bitty, like, fucking 5 seconds of, we're trying to do our best to show you a slight representation of what the gameplay might look like at the very end when she, like, jumps off the rock and swings, was like, holy shit, we're going to see Naughty Dog do, like, action adventure combat without guns, or at least not gun focused. So I'm going to let you lead this. You were the one that guessed that this was going to be here. I thought it would probably end up being at the Summer Games Fest next year. How you feeling? You're a Naughty Dog fan, but you were one of the people that were kind of, you didn't hate The Last of Us 2, but you didn't love it.
I don't know. I was excited to see this. Supposedly that was gameplay, not like a simulated version of it, you know?
I mean, yeah, they all said in-engine, but I really wonder, that camera pool doesn't look, you know what I mean? That camera pool doesn't strike me as gameplay, but it'd be cool if they did.
Well, like I said,
that'd be really cool.
they said afterwards that, or I read afterwards that it was gameplay, but it doesn't matter to me because it was clearly just them setting the tone for what the game's going to be.
For sure. Well, honestly, with some games, this is more common in racing games, and I actually really like it. There are racing games that when you hit a drift on the corner, it'll pull the camera down low beside the car to like it basically exaggerate the moment. I actually think it'd be pretty cool if against certain enemies that are like bigger than you, that the camera would dynamically pull underneath you. And I can honestly see Naughty Dog being one of the studios trying to figure out a way to make the combat things feel more dynamic than just God of War over the shoulder. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
So,
I'm into it though. I don't know. There, like you said, there's not a ton to say about this. Like, it's cool. I'm glad we know of another. We're starting to slowly learn about PlayStation games, so that's really dope. But my biggest takeaway is just like the second this trailer opened, I knew everything was going to be annoying about it. Like,
okay, let's hear it.
Hold on, no. I don't mean like the game itself. Sure. I mean the discourse around the game was going to be annoying as fuck.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure.
The second I saw a woman who was not white shaving her head, I'm like, holy fuck, Twitter's gonna suck.
Yeah.
And then
Twitter's
she had
already.
that. Once she had that scene of her slurping the soda, I was like, no. Why did you do this? It was like they must have known. Like, I'm sure that was like in the can, like that was ready to go. We talked about that name, Intergalactic, the Heretic Project, a while ago. We had a conversation about that. I think we both thought it was the San Diego game, or not San Diego, Santa Monica game.
Yeah. Well,
but
yeah. While we're talking about the name for a second, I don't, and I know they have a tendency for very simply named games.
Mm-hmm.
I don't love the name of this.
No, I don't either.
It feels a little too like wordy, and it kind of, I know it's not, but it's like right on the edge of feeling like word salad.
It is word salad to me.
And I'm sure the game may make it feel more, but it's not the most inspired name. And I know that's a hard thing because like The Last of Us is not an inspired name, but it's succinct and it really gets the message across. Uncharted is succinct and it gets the message across. And then their other two series are just character mascots named. The games are named after the characters. So it's kind of hard to go off of. But my point being is that this is, I don't think it's bad. And I think naming IPs has got to be getting considerably harder because it's like there's just so much out there.
I don't know. It was just, the name is just one of those things where I'm like, why was it not just Intergalactic or the Heretic Project? Why was it both? I'm sure there's a reason. It doesn't.
My assumption is like, but it is weird that they're, which I guess that's always been the case though, because like even Uncharted 1 was Uncharted Drake's Fortune.
Yeah.
And so my assumption is that this is Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet, and the next game will be Intergalactic, something else. So that means the series is called Intergalactic, and it's not bad. It's just also not great. That's really all I'm saying. It feels, I don't know. I guess I expected something that felt a little more like when you say it or when you hear it, you're like, ooh, from Naughty Dog, and that didn't quite hit me. When they finally showed the name, I was like, oh, okay.
I think in the end, I think you'll agree with me. In the end, this doesn't really matter because it's going to launch. It's going to get tens. And it's going to be incredibly popular. And then, because if you'd come to me with the name Uncharted, I would have said that's a fucking dumb name. I thought the Switch, stupid name. So I just think it'll get to a point where it's like it's just locked in.
The general rule of thumb is that you probably shouldn't listen to the overarching consumer base because. Or the consumer base that are being the loudest, because we tend to think that we know. Like, don't get me wrong, I still stand firmly by the fact that the Xbox Series X and Series S was terrible naming, and I think that that's proved out. But the reality is, like, does that mean that my own recommendation would have been better? Probably not. I think Xbox messed up the moment they didn't just call it the Xbox 2.
The Xbox 720.
I honestly think that would have been better than, because if you're already going to pull 360 out of your ass, you might as well just lean into it. You know what I mean?
Why did they name it that? I wish
don't
I
know, dude.
knew. But yeah, I don't have anything else to say about Intergalactic. I'm really hyped that we got a new IP from Sony and Naughty Dog.
Man, there's something to talk about afterwards that came from Neil Druckmann, but continue.
The biggest thing that I have to say, and we'll get into this when we go into my questions quick, but I knew that this game was here the second Astrobot took home like fucking 6 awards.
Really? Man, I was really surprised at how much Astrobot really swept the awards.
I texted Sean at like an hour and a half into that show. I think Astrobot was at 3 awards, and I was like, I'm telling you, this is ending with Naughty Dog.
Yeah.
And then once it won Game of the Year, I'm like, I'm 100% right. And then he's like, oh, we got one more thing. And I'm like, I'm 100% right. And then it finally, the photorealistic, I was like, that's Naughty Dog, but I couldn't be sure.
The moment I saw her muscles, I was like, this looks like the way they portrayed muscles for The Last of Us 2. And it looks better, clearly. But I was like, yeah, you can tell this is like Naughty Dog's skeletal. Like, this is how they build out characters. And I think it looks great. I mean, too, say what you will over the actual, okay, like visually, it's very well done. I'm excited. I don't want to downplay that. I'm excited in the fact that I'm more excited to see what the planets look like than I am necessarily what we were shown, because I do kind of feel like we've been in a position where I'm kind of tired of seeing all space things being this retro space setup. And I'm not saying that makes this game bad, but I wasn't as excited by seeing a very old school and I know someone else has said this. I'm not treading into new ground, but there is a little bit of that. You see it and you're like, man, Guardians of the Galaxy really did a number on entertainment in terms of the way people view like space fantasy games, because there's just kind of this expectation that you're going to see like 80s equipment and screens, and I liken it to Aliens. You know how Aliens spaceships were all like CRT monitors still, because no one could conceive that TVs would eventually not be CRTs. And so it's like that game has that aesthetic going for it, but a little bit more of that retro 70s vibe with the coloring and stuff, and like the way that 70s and 80s people saw the future. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I just feel like, unfortunately, like I said, so much IP is starting to come out that this look is a little more played out than maybe they even realized when they started development on this game 4 years ago. And it was arguably a little played out then, but it's just, as the market keeps going, it gets a little worse. And now that's only what we saw there. And I don't think it's like a big indictment. I'm really curious to see what the planets look like and what they're able to do there, because it's not really a concern, because I think Naughty Dog has a good track record of making lush environments that are interesting to want to go through. But also, I feel like a lot of games that have started doing space travel of some sort have started to hit this thing where there's a little bit of a No Man's Sky look to almost everything, and that's not ideal. And I don't think it's going to happen here, but I can't wait to be for sure that that's not what's happening, and get to see something that does pull back that. I see the inspiration from like a Jak 3 and a Jak 2, but moving it forward to a different art style and with a different goal in mind than necessarily being platform focused, you know? But the conversation I really want to have around is what came about after this, where someone on Twitter poked out, and so do what you will, this may not be true, but I think it is, and I think it spells out pretty accurately, that after all the waves of layoffs that happened at PlayStation, and after some things happened at Naughty Dog, like the cancellation of their multiplayer game and kind of moving forward, that basically there was a little snippet that talked about Neil Druckmann making sure that they structured Naughty Dog to become a powerhouse for IP. And my curiosity there is, are they being structured in which they can consistently start pumping out new IP? What does he mean by an IP powerhouse? Is he just saying that now they'll be the studio that has the ability to dip their toes into Uncharted, The Last of Us, or more Intergalactic? Or is he talking about doing Intergalactic, maybe doing another new IP, and then doing another Intergalactic, and then another, you know what I'm saying? Like kind of staggering their releases?
Well, yeah, I mean, think about how it's going, right? Uncharted from Naughty Dog is gone, right? Mm-hmm. I'm assuming if we get another one, it'll be a different studio. Yeah. The Last of Us is probably about to end. And then
I
now
could
they're
see
starting on their next
Intergalactic
journey.
and then The Last of Us 3 and then maybe an Intergalactic 2 and then a new IP again.
Right. And that's the way their pattern's going, right? The Last of Us 2, Intergalactic. The Last of Us came out after Uncharted 2. Like they usually find they go to their second game, they start a new IP, they finish their series, then they start a new IP, and then they finish their series. So I would think that we would get this will come out, and then we'll get The Last of Us 3, Intergalactic 2, and the new IP. So when I hear those statements, to me it just sounds like they want to be able to make like Concord. They don't want to be a Concord when they're making a new IP, right?
Yeah. They want to make sure that whatever their new IP is, they have a much better, firm understanding of it is going to land, and this is probably where it's going to land. Yeah.
Like you assume what they're doing with this game, this character is the plan is for them to be front and center on PlayStation when Ellie no longer is, or with Ellie.
And I kind of bring this up, and I'm not saying it's strong, but do you not at least kind of get what I'm saying with the vibes of like the same vibes that are in the opening part of this with the way they choose to portray the ship enters and everything? There's a little bit of that active in Concord. Like that's just and now Concord did it with much less inspired art direction.
Well, yeah, this looks like what I would have based on the teaser trailer of Concord expected to see
from Concord. And that's kind of what I mean is that this aesthetic, they're doing a much better job of delivering it, thankfully. But this aesthetic is something that we're seeing in gaming often enough to kind of pinpoint it back to things. And I think that really is just how many people are making games and how many ideas are being thrown about and how long it takes to make games. There's no way to be able to say, oh, by the time this game comes out, too many games are gonna have looked this way. And ultimately, it's still Naughty Dog. It's still Naughty Dog's art design. Their attention to detail is insane. It's really, even if Naughty Dog is treading familiar ground, they're probably going to do it in a way that is like standing on top of almost anybody else who did it. And that's just naturally how that's their talent pool. They have that, they can do that. But I thought that statement around there being an IP powerhouse was really interesting. And I buy it because I think it lines into Sony's, Hideki, or Tatoki, that's what it was, Tatoki's remarks about, feeling like they don't have enough IP that they feel that they're garnering. And I think what they did is they started looking at some of their studios and being like, which studio has been able to consistently pump out very well respected and achieved IP. And I think Naughty Dog is like one of their aces in the hole in that. Every IP from Naughty Dog was bigger than the last one. Jack and Daxter got bigger than Crash did. Uncharted got bigger than than Jack did. The Last of Us got bigger than Uncharted did. And I think that they're hoping, and that's probably a good test of, can this get at least as big as The Last of Us? And if it does, and then they can do it again 10 years down the road. And then if they can start setting that pattern up, what does that mean? And how can they, one of the things that's been interesting about Sony is this idea of letting studios help other studios. Will Naughty Dog become like the Compass studio of like, look at what Naughty Dog did, work with them, and we're gonna have like a small team of developers at Naughty Dog who are, their entire goal is to exist in an intermediary fashion where they can work with other developers and like give them tips on how do you find out what the best IP ideas that you have in your studio are, how do you foster those into groundable, executable ideas. And that would be interesting because that's kind of what they're doing with Bungie as a games as a service thing. Like, hey, Bungie will make their own games and they'll be a little, but that's what their intention at least was with Bungie. Hey, get some of these people, let them make games, but then also go to the other people and say, this is what you maybe should do.
Yeah. It's an expertise thing.
Yeah.
And I think Naughty Dog is obviously great at it. They've done it 5 times. So we'll see. Yeah. To me, I don't know. The only thing I'd really have to respond to that is just that 10 years seems like too long to really be, I don't know. If you're trying to pump out IP, you feel like you'd have to move a little bit quicker than that.
Man, I would love to see that too, but let's be real for a second. This is a new IP. You yourself think that it's very likely that the next game is the last of Us game, right? So that'd be The Last of Us 3. How quickly do you really see a Last of Us 3 being able to come out from them? If it's even 4 years past this, then you don't get to another new IP until 8 years, which is better than 10. But if game development keeps extending the way it has, it's kind of hard not to see The Last of Us 3 being 5 or 6 years down the road, and then the new IP being 6 or 7 years down from that if it keeps ballooning out this way. I hope not. God, I hope not.
In my head, it just doesn't seem like that's really possible.
What because do you think the max is? Go ahead.
Well, because you're giving I feel like Naughty Dog stops being Naughty Dog soon. I don't know how to explain what I'm trying to say, but like Druckmann is gonna eventually leave, and like he's in his 40s. He's obscenely wealthy. Like he's got one, maybe 2 more games left in him, or is he just one of those passion guys? So he's got 3 because that's 15 years, and he'll be 65, and you retire at 65. Mm-hmm. Or game developers are not fucking directors in Hollywood who can direct a movie for 2 months and then sit on their porch editing it for another couple months, and then they make $30 million. It's a whole different process. So I feel like in order to really become an IP factory like this, you have to find a way to make your dev teams more efficient, whether that's being a bigger studio, expanding, or breaking into multiple teams. And Naughty Dog seems like they don't want to do the multiple teams thing.
Even though they've done it in the past. So I assume that comes from not really loving it whenever they did Uncharted 3 and The Last of Us as separate teams.
Yeah. Well, then they all end up coming together to finish one anyway. So it's like...
Well, that didn't happen. So Uncharted 3, as far as I know, the majority of the dev teams for Uncharted 3 and The Last of Us were completely separate. What ended up happening is that when they were trying to continue on with The Last of Us Part 2 and continue on there, basically the 2 teams ended up merging together to completely reboot Uncharted 4.
Mm.
Yeah. So it's like they ended up coming back together as one team for Uncharted 4 with like the little team that could do like the remasters and stuff. But that's just like a couple of devs that stay out separately. So, I mean, I don't think any of us really know the inner workings of Naughty Dog at this point. I think Sony clearly put an effort towards trying to reposition and pull all of their studios into new areas that could facilitate multiple teams within a studio. And so I think Sony wants every studio. I think they're probably nudging them, being like, you don't have to, but we'd really like you to experiment with more than one team. What would you do if you had 2 teams of this size going? Could we get a game every 3 years from Naughty Dog instead of every 6 years? It's like, can we get a new Sucker Punch game every 2 years? And I think that like they're looking at Insomniac and being like, look, Insomniac has 3 teams internally. Look at what they're doing. We get a new Insomniac game every 2 years minimum.
Exactly. So, I don't know. I worry about that kind of stuff. It seems like people get old.
Well, I think so too, and I think the biggest thing of it is that I think only goes to exaggerate burnout in the industry, because it's a lot easier to feel burnt out on an IP and an idea when you don't get to iterate on it except for every 4 or 5 years. I think that game development felt more lively in some aspects when you knew you were going to iterate on an idea within 2 years. You'd be like, cool, Uncharted, we didn't get to do everything we wanted, but Uncharted 2, we're going to go ham. And then there's going to be some ideas when we're making Uncharted 2 that we can't figure out, but we'll figure it out for 3. And then we'll figure the ones we can't get in 3 out in 4. But you're making those games every 2 years for the most part.
Right.
Once you go from The Last of Us Part 2 being 2020 and your first real new game being in 2024, or really 2025 if we're lucky, you're getting to this thing where it's like, oh, it's been 5 years since a new Naughty Dog game. Like, what does that mean? And that means someone's been working on the same Naughty Dog game for 5 years minimum.
Yeah, what does that career look like? Where it's like your CV is, I made 2 games in my 20 career. Like,
yeah.
That's just crazy to me, because I know that's 10 years, but like at a certain point you look at that and you're like, do you have enough experience really in the industry to like you're not getting hired at Infinity Ward if that's what you did. You don't got the experience for that. You just spent 10 years doing you're really good at making Nathan Drake swing from chandeliers. I don't know. I'm not trying to belittle anyone. I just think that that's a point where you need to start moving faster with your dev stuff.
Well, I think that goes back into and everyone's going to have different ways to attack this. So that's where I'll leave it after this. We can wrap up. But I'd say that's where I think difference of opinion comes in for people like Sean Layden, where I think Sean Layden's very easy viewpoint of that. And I think clearly it would work. I just think it went against what Sony was wanting to do to some degree, is that Sony wants to have their cake and eat it too by making their games be even bigger budget, but sell way more. And I think his thing was, you've got to realize that if you want your games to do well, you've got to make them cheaper. And one of the best ways to make them cheaper is to make them lower in scope. Yeah. And lower the expectation of fan base by no longer having every single game be a 25-hour story-driven campaign. It's okay to have a 12-hour God of War game. It's okay to have a 10-hour Uncharted sequel. It's okay to have a Horizon game that isn't quite as big in its open world. And I'm not saying those as any particular examples. I'm just saying that all of those games could see themselves shrink down somewhere in scope. If you don't want to give up the scope and the size, then maybe give up how far you're wanting to push the graphics. Maybe lean towards stylized art so that you can make a game that still looks pretty, but it's not having to be worked on to where you go, how do we make the veins of his bulge? How do we make the veins in his bulge really work? We want to see them
Abby's
through the cloth.
What does Abby's face look like?
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, I guess the only thing I'll say, and then we should move on. I'm tired. But the
same.
Oh fuck! The Last of Us trilogy. It's a fucking trilogy. It has taken 2 full console cycles. Probably 3.
Yeah, we probably don't get that game until PS6.
When all is said and done. 3 console gen. That's too long. Do you know how many people played and loved The Last of Us 1 and then died?
Chris is going dark here.
No, but seriously. It's like people who never saw Red Sox. They never saw Red Sox win a World Series.
Fair. But let's go to a game that I think even highlights this more. And let's move it away from Naughty Dog for a second, just to highlight the problem that we're going to. Can you imagine the person, 45 years old, bought Skyrim day one, played it, and said, "Holy shit! Can you imagine what the Elder Scrolls 6 is going to look like in 5 years?"
Mm-hmm.
And can you imagine how many people will never? You know how many people probably died after seeing the reveal trailer for the in development trailer for the Elder Scrolls 6, and we're like, cool, maybe soon, and then their COVID hit, and COVID got them. Can you imagine that world?
They died just like, I can't wait to play that independently published Bethesda game on my PS5 on day one. I can't wait.
So, yeah, I think that's the thing. And I know that at least Starfield came out in the interim and Fallout did as well. And so there's stuff that Bethesda put out. And I'm not even saying that IP can't take long breaks. I actually think it can. But I think it's weird sometimes when, regardless of what you see, the development times on these games are getting quite long. Between Skyrim to Fallout 4 is 4 years. From Fallout 4 to Starfield was 7 years.
Yeah.
Because Starfield came out last year, 2023, and Fallout 4 came out in 2015. That's exactly 8 years.
It's too long.
Holy shit, that's a long time. Then you're saying right now it sounds like the Elder Scrolls we're still not going to get for 4 or 5 more years. Can you know how crazy that is?
Well, that's the thing. All of these companies taking this amount of time, there is a conceivable chance that you and I will see Fallout 5, but not all of you, me, and Todd Howard see Fallout 6.
Yeah. And I know that we're not entitled to that, but it's if we're taking a second to riff on what we wish the industry was doing better, being able to iterate on IP that clearly has people who want to make more of that IP and consumers who clearly want to experience more of that IP, it'd be great if you can find a way to make both of those things come together a little quicker. If the people didn't have to wait so long and the people making them didn't have to wait so long to even get finished with the idea.
It's not that we're entitled to it, but I have to wonder, at a certain point, when does Fallout stop being relevant?
I think if the companies get what they
it.
want, never, hopefully, right? They hope that Fallout becomes like an evergreen IP that people enjoy. And I think that's part of what this make TV series things is about, right? It's like, oh, make a TV series about it, because now we get new fans for different reasons, and you start to stretch the IP outside of the bounds, and there's good and bad to that, right? But
I think the only thing I disagree with you on is like, if you've got an ongoing story going, you should not be taking this long. Like, it should not take you. It should not take you almost 20 years to wrap up a trilogy about the fucking apocalypse.
Part of me agrees with you, but I also say that if you make the games like you should, and I think they did. This is a matter of opinion. I think that The Last of Us 1 stands entirely on its own, and I think that The Last of Us 2 stands entirely with The Last of Us 1, and even in some degrees, The Last of Us 2 stands a lot on its own. You get the context that you absolutely need. You should play The Last of Us 1 before The Last of Us 2, but you can play and experience The Last of Us 2. So what I'm saying is that even if The Last of Us 3 comes way down the line, if you're making these games right, each one should feel like if they never make another one, it'd be okay. And I really do think that the way that they play out The Last of Us 2 is a lot like The Last of Us 1. I am fine if we never get another one, but I could also see room to make another one. I think I agree with you if you give me like a cliffhanger at the end and then you never come back. Then if you're leaving every game with a cliffhanger and it takes 20 years to get 3 games, I am so pissed at you, because why?
Yeah. No, but you're right.
You know, all the same, I'm sure that that's happening somewhere. I mean, thankfully, the Elder Scrolls 5 and the Elder Scrolls 6 will not be connected in any way, shape, or form, just like Fallout 5 will have nothing to do with Fallout 4 ultimately. But
all right, are you ready for the results of our prediction game?
Let's hear it. I think you won.
All right. We shall see. Question 1, will Sony announce a new IP at the Game Awards? Brett said no. I said yes. The answer was yes.
Yep.
How many Tencent or Tencent adjacent games will be announced? This was a weird one because they showed a bunch of them, but I actually said 0. I don't think they announced anything. I think
I don't think that they did either. The only thing that might have been was that anime game we were talking about after the first Burger Kazan that I cannot remember the name of, and I didn't find it. I think that was Tencent adjacent. I just cannot remember the name of it to save my life. Arid?
Yeah, I think you might be right. So number 3, how many holy shit moments will there be? Brett said 1, Chris said 2. Through my interpretation, I said 3.
Can
Witcher,
you name those?
Okami, Intergalactic.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Fair enough.
You could argue for 4 with Turok, but I feel like that's a very niche argument.
I think that's too niche. I think it's a holy shit moment for like a very select group of people, which is cool. I'm glad that it's there. But I think if I was really going to do, I don't even think Okami's really a holy shit moment, because
they treated it like a holy shit moment.
But Okami was a niche game when it came out. That game did not really do well, but it didn't cost a lot to make either. And that game's become a bit more of a cult classic. It's almost Okami's like a lot like Nier. And where the original Nier came out and didn't do very well, and the studio behind it closed, and then Nier Automata comes out, and everybody suddenly is like, "Can we play the original Nier?" And then it comes out, and people are like, "We love it, we love it." It's like, it's the same fucking game from 10 years ago. You just didn't play it then.
Do you think 2? I would go. I'll be fine with 2.
I think 2, but
okay.
You know, what did I say? 1?
So that means you said 1, I said 2. So you give me a point. Thank you.
You got it. Yeah.
Question 4: will there be a please wrap it up signal? No. Brett said no. I said yes. I'm sure there was one, but they never showed it, and that's what I was asking for. So, Brett, you win.
Hey, look at that. I got 1.
Question 5. Will GTA 6 be at the Game Awards? Brett, yes. Chris, absolutely fucking not. Answer, absolutely fucking not.
I was hoping for Jeff. I'm sad for him. I thought 10th anniversary, he's got to get some pull, right? He can do it. He can't.
Will Kojima is number 6. Will Kojima announce any details about Death Stranding, Fizzant, or OD during his 20-minute monologue? Brett, no. Chris, no. Answer, no. There was no monologue. Question 7. How many games will Chris be personally excited about? Brett said 3. I said 5. The answer was 8. How many games will Brett be excited about?
I'm proud of you because that means that you really left that show just well beyond your expectation.
I was very happy. But it's funny because I made a joke originally and said 9. And then I was like, no, my answer is actually 5. And I was fucking close to 9.
Yeah.
So
if we were Price is Writing it, right? As close as you can get without going over.
Yes. So how many games will Brett be excited about? Do you want to give an answer besides what you told me?
Yeah, so I told you 4, and I think going back through it, that counts. That checks out.
Gotcha. Answer was 4. Brett said 3. Chris said 5. So I want to say, did you
directly in the middle?
Yeah. Did you look at the document? Did you actually end up going down?
No.
You didn't see this. I was hoping that you did, just because I thought.
Brett, do not continue on to the next page. I cannot control you. I am not God, but this is an exercise in trust. I did not see that. Didn't even see that.
Go to the next page.
For real, man, this hurts.
You know what?
Good. That's good.
That's wonderful stuff. He didn't even see my message, but that works perfectly.
Yeah, I think my laptop resolution didn't play out well because literally from where I'm at, the last thing I can see from the top of the document is just the TGA link.
Oh, really?
So I didn't know anything else was down there.
That's so funny. So before you gave me an answer, I wrote, guess. Brett will say he's excited to some degree about all the games, but if he has to give an answer, he'll say 3. So I came very close. Or he'll say 2. So I came close. That was my
you weren't far off. Honestly, I'm surprised it was 4. In some ways, I could argue myself down to 3, but I'm just going to let my optimism of 4 stay.
Yeah, be happy.
Give it 4. Yeah,
don't worry, be happy, man. How many new games will we see at the TGA? We very much undershot this.
Yeah, drastically.
Brett 4, Chris 5. Answer 25-ish.
Yeah, so Chris, we definitely. I've learned a lot about this. You got to guess hard. You just got to guess way out of there,
way high.
Yeah,
it's ish because some stuff like Witcher 4 we knew about, what we hadn't seen. So to me, that's technically a new game announcement. So depending on interpretation, we were both wrong. Either way. All right, what is game of the year? Brett, Shadow of the Erdtree. Chris, Balatro. Answer, Astrobot.
I want to take a real second here to say I still don't know that I actually, having not played enough of the games, I find it very difficult to accurately talk about what should have been game of the year. But I am pleasantly surprised that Astrobot was able to get it. Not that I am saying it 100% deserves it, but I do think it was a great game and I can see it in the game of the year in my own mind. I'm more just surprised that they did it. I almost wonder, considering that they made jokes throughout the thing about the DLC getting nominated for Game of the Year with the little Muppets. I was like, I think they may have gotten bullied out of letting Shadow of the Erdtree win.
I could see that.
Like they were like, guys, if we let Shadow win, we might literally have an issue on our hands.
What is funnier though, if they switched on the fly, or if they only nominated Shadow of the Erdtree to make jokes about the DLC being nominated.
That would have been so fucking funny.
Have no intention of giving it Game of the Year.
The upside is that Elden Ring Night Rain will be totally eligible for Game of the Year by everyone else's. By everyone
could you imagine
if
it had one Game of the Year and then they went for a 3-peat with Elden Ring 1?
How fucking wild would that have been, though? For real. I was pleasantly surprised by that, and I was also pleasantly surprised by Balatro's little back to back to back. I was like, hell yeah, let's go.
It's like, my man. I will say I really respect that Local Thunk refuses to make a fucking appearance anywhere.
Fuck yeah.
It's so funny. When they're like, yeah, I'm accepting on behalf of Local Thunk. And they're like, all right, cool. And he was there, but he was like, I ain't showing my face. I'm like, I respect this shit. I respect that. You're a great man, my hero. Happy for Astrobot. I think it's insane that it won. That's all I have to say.
I was surprised at how much Astrobot won. Again, not saying that it didn't deserve any of the things it won. I was just really surprised. I think Sony is so fucking happy right now that they bet on Astrobot.
Look, I'm saying this half as a joke, half as I don't like Astrobot as much as everybody else. it's very conspicuous that Astrobot wins 6 fucking awards or whatever it wins, and then they close with the new Naughty Dog game at the Game Awards.
There were a lot of people saying that there's a conspiracy that Sony, Sony favoritism.
6.
I mean, great game. I'm going to give it credit, but it's a lot. One of them, hold on, what was it? I think it was Metaphor that won.
Metaphor won Best RPG. I know that.
No, it was Best Music, and I was like, Stellar Blade for me, and then it was Final Fantasy, which I don't hate, but man, it's Stellar Blade has some banging ass jams to the point where Stellar Blade has such good music that I can hear it like at almost no volume in the background of a YouTube video for like 10 seconds. And I'm like, fucking Stellar Blade. And that's how you know. Like I do that with Nier all the time. I'll be like, that's fucking Kaine.
I don't know if you heard it, but the Balatro rendition with the fucking Game of the Year orchestra.
Boy, it was
so
cool.
fucking
See,
good.
now here, I've always, like I said before that when we talked about it last episode, I think that the Game of the Year medley is the fucking coolest thing. And I thought originally when that was like the takeover for musical performances, I was like, this is a lot cooler.
I thought it was.
I mean,
really
at least they didn't take away one for the other. Like at least pulling in Snoop Dogg didn't take away the medley. Yeah, because that's cool. I like the medley a lot.
I thought it was funny. You watch that back screen and it's like all these like high octane action packed. It's like Astrobot, Final Fantasy VII. We're fighting Sephiroth. It's Metaphor. It's Elden Ring. And then it pops up and it's that banging ass bass line. And it's just the cards just going off on the screen. Like, this is good shit. Game of the Year is Balatro, baby.
Balatro's so good. I don't even know if I can say it's my own personal Game of the Year, but I think that game's going to be more important than people realize. I think it might end up kind of filling out the Shovel Knight area where it's going to be like a Balatro's the talked about indie game that continues to keep giving, and it just surprises everybody.
Yep. And you know what, man? Of the podcasts that I listen to, which is a lot, we were first on Balatro. Okay, no one will ever give me our credit for being first on the podcast. I'm just joking. But
Balatro is straight fire. It's hard to deny. It's so funny watching people come to it now, and not in like a "I told you so" way, but in like a "Yes, you'll finally get to feel it."
My favorite was when people were downplaying it.
When that you like the first run that you complete is like crack. I've been chasing that high ever since. You can't even get it from Balatro anymore. Like you can get close.
You can once you get gold stake on all of them, it happens, and again, and then you get gold stake on all the Jokers, and it happens again. Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's a lot of
squeeze for.
Yeah, I loved seeing the like people shit talking Balatro for being nominated for Game of the Year, playing it, and then being like, I understand.
It's so good.
That was my favorite genre of tweet, where you'd see like the Balatro account posting the Jimbo face like right under their tweet, and it was just that for what a game! I'm gonna play Balatro.
All right, so we got one guess on an announcement not already announced or teased.
Yes, thank you.
And we talked about Borderlands 4 was already teased. Now, of course, I think both of us kind of. I genuinely didn't expect to see Silk Song. That was like maybe I can call its bluff out and see if I can get it out there. Silk Song wasn't there. I'm convinced that game doesn't exist.
It's not real.
Yeah,
a third person over the shoulder action.
That game doesn't exist until I load it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Have I told this is the last thing I'm going to say. Have I told you the story that I made a joke with my old boss that I wouldn't talk to him again until Silk Song came out, because he was a huge Hollow Knight fan, and I have not talked to him in like 5 years, and I'm gonna send him a text and be like, hey, congrats on Silk Song coming out. It's been so long.
Honestly, I would, at this point, even after I loaded it up, I'd have to like start the level and play for like an hour before I'm convinced that it's not about to Rickroll me or some crazy shit.
That would be fucking hilarious if you turn it on and it's just Hollow Knight 1.
As soon as you hit play game, it's just never gonna.
It would be funny if they started the theme
what
song
if
to Hollow Knight with those notes.
That would be pretty good. Silk Song's Hollow Knight. Yeah. what if that fucking, what is that game called? How am I missing it out on now? What was that fucking game that never made it out, that we did the stupid read of the script and
Abandoned.
Abandoned. What if Abandoned, the app would have one day just updated and you hit play chapter and it was just a Rickroll video? How fucking great would that have been?
It would have been funny. I still check that app every once in a while just to see.
just to see. Yeah,
I downloaded it the other day just to check it.
I still can't believe Sony let that onto their fucking store. I'm gonna be dead. I cannot believe that happened.
I want to know the story. There has to be some story there.
Dude, he convinced someone. He got someone bought in, and that someone probably feels like an asshole.
There's a PlayStation blog post about it. It's not like they just put the trailer up. There was a post.
That's fucking wild, man. I don't know. That's crazy.
All
but
right,
good for them.
Our last question is, for the record, we were both wrong. I said Judas. You said
Judas.
I thought Judas would be there, but whatever.
Honestly, I thought Judas was going to be the one last thing until he said from a studio that's like renowned. I was like, no, this is like a known studio, and Ken Levine's is new. So, yeah.
Is Blue Point's Bloodborne 2 or remake going to be at the TGAs? The answer was no. With a sad face.
But good news, account from that. The constantly rumored Days Gone remastered was also not there, which can only mean that maybe, just maybe, that doesn't exist. Part of me wants it to exist just so I can get the platinum again.
That's all I want.
And then part of me doesn't want it to exist because it seems like such an egregious waste of resources.
I would legitimately spend full price on it, so bring it out. Let's go.
Chris is like, right now.
Come on.
Okay. This has been a much longer episode than I really thought it was going to be. I'm not upset with that. It's funny how it ended up going. Chris,
I
thank you.
expected a solid 90. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, and honestly, I thought the same, but we got way more lost on the early news topics than I thought we would, which is not a bad thing. So, all that to say, I'll be enjoying playing Fable on my PlayStation 5 or 6 whenever that game happens to finally make it out. So, Chris, thanks for joining me. As always, we want to shout out our patrons who go over to patreon.com/Nartech and give as little as $1 per month. You guys are a huge benefit to us and allow us to keep this show going without having to dig into our own pockets, which is fantastic. We appreciate it. As always, we shout out those patrons as a way to thank them for allowing us to do this. So without further ado, we shout out Duh Overlord, Spencer, Brandon Edwards, Alex, Barry Rogers, Stingray X, Matt Tubbs, Easton328, Lecheon69, Bailey Robertson, Mark Schutz, Rude Days 93, Kevin Baconbits, Danny Villalobos, Jehudi MD, No Fate, Josh Ayers, Derek Porter, Matthew Green, and Sean Sanderud. Thanks to each and every one of you, and we'll see you next time.